Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. As I go into these shows, I always I have a little roving thing in my mind where I'm like, what show is this? What show is this? What show is this? And I just go into it and hope for the best. And I got there at the last second, like the very last second. Again, my name is Colin Moriarty. Joined as always by my brother, Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, good to see you, my friend. How are you today?
Great to see you. I'm unusual. I'm really excited for this show. Got some new blood. New blood for our show. Not new blood, but new blood for our show. Anyway, I'm exhausted today. I woke up thinking, I spent like the first 15 minutes thinking like, why am I? It's like unusual level of exhaustion. Then I remembered my family had to sit down with me last night at dinner and told me that my youngest, my son, now wants smoothies in the morning, fresh fruit smoothies. So the blender is going to be on at 6:30.
Oh,
and it was. And it wasn't a discussion. I was being told.
You guys just running some sort of Jamba juice out of your kitchen?
It's just Jamba now, Colin.
Yeah.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, they took out the juice. It's just
fair
Jamba.
enough.
Oh, it's like Dunkin'. What?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. So I'm unusually tired, but my family is very, my whole thing. So, my family all leave the house at 6:30. My wife teaches high school. My oldest is a junior at that same school. And then my son's in junior high right next door. So they all leave together. So I'm free now to sleep as late as I want, but not anymore.
Yeah.
And he's demanding. I thought he was like 2, but he's
13.
Okay.
Well, listen, I thought you were going to say that you had to get up to make them, because then I was going to be like, Dagan, I know we want to be better than our parents, but this is getting too far.
I would do that. Don't even plant that idea.
No, please don't. That's
don't
too much, Dagan. That's too much. You heard an unusual voice for this show, though. I'm very glad to have him here. He's been on Sacred Symbols Plus, but this is his first time on Constellation. Hopefully not the last, although maybe he'll have a horrifying experience and never want to come back. His name is Finn Mckenty. Finn, it's awesome to have you. Punk Rock MBA. Plus, you do your other, you have a side YouTube channel as well. And here's something fun I learned about you today. I just Googled your name. You have a Wikipedia page.
Yep.
So I was going through your Wikipedia page. Last Stand Media, the biggest fan-funded games outfit in the history of the industry. No Wikipedia page. No big deal. But Finn Mckenty's got his Wikipedia page, and
you sound salty.
I'm not upset about that even a little bit.
You sound upset.
I just wanted to point it just for no apropos of nothing. But it's good to have you on the show, my friend. I wanted to say this too. I find your Twitter presence to be especially pleasurable for me.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So welcome. It's good to see you.
Yeah. And for anybody listening, so I have a YouTube channel that some people might know, and I just want to give credit to Colin for being one of the big inspirations for me starting this whole thing. So I don't think I would be here without your inspiration. So thank you.
Wow. That's very nice of you to say. I mean, I appreciate it. I had, it's funny. I had, I don't know if you know Second Wind, the old Escapist guys. They started their new outfit, and they are almost as big as Last Stand already on Patreon. Wow. And they got like something they started, and then they got like 250,000 YouTube subscribers. And I'm like, we are going to be at 85,000 YouTube subscribers probably for the rest of my life.
Well, what might make you even more envious is I'm also on Wiki Feet.
Oh my God. Are you really?
Shit.
Yes.
That's
Chris
exciting.
on there too?
Is Chris on there?
I think Chris might be on there.
Be careful with your search. Go ahead and go into the private search.
You got to look for Wiki Feet Men,
search.
because they have another site. The main one is just for women.
Yeah, Wiki Feet Men. That's so interesting.
Yeah. Oh, yep.
I've
Chris
noticed that people, it started kind of as a joke, and I think people have started really doing it, of just putting like covering their feet in pictures where they're barefoot so that no one can see them or whatever. I'm like, it's so weird.
I say let it fly, baby. Let it fly.
Yeah,
do your worst.
Does it make you feel good that you're on there?
Kind of. Yeah. What's it like?
I had see that.
I'll be honest. I had somebody make the profile for me for a joke, but all the photos were uploaded like hours later by somebody that we don't know, and they're all photos from my Instagram from like 2 years ago.
Interesting.
Like, who was hoarding these photos of my feet for years?
I'm jealous.
just waiting.
I'm jealous of the whole thing. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. Good to see you today, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm happy to have Finn on the show. Finn, it's funny that how we are kind of, ended up being in the same orbit here. Because I remember I'd watched a ton of your videos. And then at one point, this was a few years back, maybe two and a half years ago. So people were tweeting at me and they're like, yo, Dustin, do you know Finn Mckenty? He shouted out Last Stand in a video. And I was like, holy shit. So it was cool because we had this mutual respect for each other, but we didn't even know until you had put that out. So it's been cool getting to know you. And dude, especially now having a Constellation, this is great. That I got to say, though, Colin said maybe you won't come back if you have a horrible experience. Jimmy had a great experience on Constellation, but there was a great meme. Colin, I don't know if you've seen this meme.
Is it the Hamas one or whatever, or the one about, or no, anti-Semitism? That's what it was.
This doesn't sound great.
Yeah.
Our topic was anti-Semitism, and there's a thing where it's like I brought up this very serious topic while he was on, and there's a little bit of a meme.
Yeah, the meme is Jimmy's like, I'm so happy I can talk about new gaming stuff or new stuff with you guys. And Colin's like, okay, first topic, anti-Semitism. That's just like stone cold Jimmy. So who knows? I mean, I saw the topics, but anything's possible on Constellation. Yeah. I mean, recently on Sacred Symbols Plus, we were talking about the ethics of furries. So anything can happen on a Last Stand show.
Man, I should have picked that as my topic. I'm fascinated by furries. Damn. We're just furries in general, but
you're always allowed to change on the fly. I mean, if you want to, that's not a big deal at all. And also, Jaffe usually gives us multiple topics and then forces us to pick one. So, so if you want to change, that's totally fine. I'm going to leave that up to you. We'll get to you, of course. But I wanted to, it's interesting. We have some good topics here this week. We have an interesting group of people here to talk about these things as well. Dagan, I was very intrigued by yours, though, and I rarely start with you. So I actually wanted to begin with you. You want to talk about something villainous, and I appreciate that. We all love our villains. So I leave it to you, my friend.
Of course. Okay, so cool. So yeah, this actually honestly started with just the Mount Rushmore thing, which I'm not even sure where that came from. And I was like, I could apply this to anything, the Mount Rushmore of anything. So you may see a recurrence of the Mount Rushmore thing, but I thought the Mount Rushmore of fictional villains for each of us, right? Movie, TV, comic book, video game, novels, whatever, wherever you want to take it, just make believe villains, right? So I thought our Mount Rushmore, so pick 4, and that's kind of tough. Let me put it to you this way. I've been thinking about this for the better part of a week, and I just know it's one of those things where I'm going to forget one great one, and then after the show, I'm be like, oh, shit, like smack myself. But I picked 4, and I'll share them with you guys, and then we'll take it from there. So who is your, Kyle, this one's for you. Who is your Lincoln, Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt of villains?
Yeah, I was going to say 2 of them are going to stay because they were slave owners. So those are my two biggest villains. But yeah, I thought carefully about this, and I think that this is a fascinating question. I actually kind of, instead of dumping all mine, it would be fun to go around the horn and hear everyone's one by one. So I don't just dump them out. So I'm just going to give you one right now.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
I wonder if you would have expected, well, I'm sure that you've thought about this, but Dr. Wiley's got to be.
I knew this was
coming. You were going to say that. Yeah. I was like,
100%.
There he is.
Dr.
The W.
Yeah.
I love this villain. And there's something, it's a bummer because we've never really gotten very much of him. And just the idea, Dagan, you and I have discussed this before, and this is actually really appropriate because Finn is here, is that I'm friends with Mega Ran, the rapper. He's a buddy of mine. And I once was on stage with him to do the song Wiley, where I sang I rapped the whole verse of the song Wiley, which is one of his great songs. And I love that song because it gave more texture to the Mega Man story than Capcom itself had ever really given it. And I was going to say,
like, how much Mega Man Dr. Wily lore is there?
We know. All right. So it depends. Also, a lot of it conflicts because some of it's from like English language instruction manuals and some of it's from like Japanese magazine stuff. And people have to remember that all of the villains in Mega Man after Mega Man 1, like all of the robot villains, are all made by real people in the world. And so people write in their own little things and stuff. So it's really hard to have like some sort of canon about it. But basically what happens is Dr. Light and Dr. Wily are partners. And one of the I think it might be the English language. It might actually be Nintendo Power or something. It says that they went to Harvard, but they just go to some fictional research university or whatever, and they're partners, and they make these robots together, which are the first line of robots like Fireman and Electman, Gutsman. And then, what ends up happening is that kind of Wily gets cast aside by the attention, and Dr. Light kind of gets all the credit and the attention, and Wily is kind of wanting revenge. And so he reprograms the robots to make him do his bidding or whatever. And it's just a very basic childlike story in that sense. But what I love about it is that he just doesn't stop. And I was making fun of it the other week because I was wearing a Mega Man 6 shirt. Are you a Mega Man fan at all, Finn? Did you play any of those games as a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Really, I like the NES games, and I like Legends. I don't care for the X games.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, so the classic ones are that's my wheelhouse too. I like the X ones kind of secondarily, and I would say maybe Battle Network tertiarily, but really,
yeah, I do like
Mega
Battle
Man.
Network also. Yeah,
yeah, and they just re-released them recently, which was cool. I haven't really sat and played them yet, but classic Mega Man 1 through 6 and 9 and 10 are really like my jams. And what I love about Wily is just that he hit all the chicanery and weird shit that he does. And Mega Man 6 came up because Mega Man 6 is hysterical because this mysterious benefactor named Mr. X appears, and he wants to hold a contest where the greatest roboticists bring their robots to this tournament, and they figure out who's who or whatever. And then it's just Dr. Wily in clear, in just a disguise, and he takes all the robots and reprograms them. So it just happens over and over and over again. Mega Man 3, Dr. Wily and Dr. Light work together again on a robot called Gamma, which you fight at the end of the game. And there's actually a really interesting one-of-a-kind logo in Mega Man 3. That's the Dr. Wily logo with Dr. Light's logo over it, because they're like back together, and it's really cool. It's in Magnum Man stage, I think. So yeah, got to give a shout out to my boy Dr. Wily. And can we just reiterate the obvious? What a missed opportunity to have him in Smash Brothers as a Pokemon trainer-like character. I don't understand why you wouldn't want to execute on that. And I got to be honest with you, although Mega Man belongs in Smash Brothers, I don't think they really did Mega Man very well in Smash Brothers. And like, he's too squat and weird.
Oh, you don't like the look of him?
No, not really. I mean,
okay.
If you look at Mega Man 11, it looks like that Mega Man looks awesome. So it would be cool for them to revisit that in the future, maybe get him involved, because he's such an interesting villain, and to have kind of a Pokemon trainer analog, I think would be kind of interesting. So that's who I want to say at the top is Dr. Wily, but I'll leave it there for now. I'll let you guys know the rest. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Who should we pass it to now? I'll go last.
Okay.
If we're going around the horn.
Dustin, why don't you go next?
One by one. Okay, Dustin, you're next.
I'll get my most nerdy and embarrassing one out of the way. A little recency bias. And I know you guys and most of the audience aren't going to know this person, but it's my fucking list. So I'm going to do it. I'll send you guys a little picture of this man. His name is Don Quixote do Flamingo from One Piece. And I love this guy because he looks like a fucking moron. He's got...
This is a broken link, by the way. But you can fix it by removing the slash after ping and all that comes after it.
I know who this one is.
Okay, let me see if I can fix it. This is very important.
He's a feminine
guy. Yeah.
Did you get the link to work?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so everyone's got the link, and I'm going to put it in the show here so everyone can see this man. But yeah, I can't get into it too far because I know a lot of our audience is watching One Piece. I don't want to spoil it for him, but this man, what I love about is One Piece, you see the show, you know that there's the Rubber Man Luffy. It's about pirates, and it's a very cartoony show, very stylized. And so with that, you would expect many of its villains to be generic evil. That is not the case over and over and over again. And so right now, Doflamingo, in where I'm watching in One Piece, is the main villain. And this dude is so incredibly evil for a kid show, where just a few examples that I'll put lightly. He has the ability where he's able to control people, and he's had people slaughter members of their family without, like, they can't control themselves. And so they're like being controlled, murdering people. He's taken over kingdoms and murdered thousands of people in the process. And he comes from a special royal lineage as well. So he's very entitled and has a very interesting backstory that's also very evil. And this all contrasts with the look. That's why I had you guys have you guys see the image where he's this guy.
So fun.
For the audio listeners, he has like a feathery pink coat on.
Yeah.
And he has pink pants where you can see he's got like these pointed toes, pointed like shoes, right? Where you can see his like hairy legs and stuff. He's a freak.
And a 14 pack or something. He's ripped.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. People always talk about the fan service of One Piece with the boobs and stuff, which it does have. But don't get me wrong. Some of these boys in One Piece also very fit.
Oh, I didn't know One Piece was known for like its boobs and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mike and I were on PSN for an hour last night before we went to bed, just going through the new games and trying to look at the weird visual novels and watch the trailers for them because they're so ridiculous.
There's some good stuff on there.
Yeah, I didn't know that One Piece was one of those kinds of things.
It does. One Piece is interesting in that it starts much more kid friendly, and then as the audience grew up, the show became much darker and much more fan servicey, but to a degree that I find tasteful enough for me. Maybe the tasteful is not the right word, but it's fine, you know. So that's my choice: Don Quixote, Don Flamingo. Don Quixote do Flamingo.
Down low. I like it. And you know what? You come to One Piece for me. You come to One Piece for the character design. So good. And there's so many characters. There's so many characters.
Dude, Dagan, that's why I'm addicted to buying the One Piece cards. Is that I don't even care about playing it, but I just like open up the packs and see what characters I get and hope I get one that's shiny. It's like the most primitive ape brain that I've given into recently.
Poor boy.
You're not the only one, dude. I was in my local coffee shop the other day. Here comes some dad, younger dad, like in his 30s. He had two of his kids in tow. They were all dressed in One Piece clothes, like One Piece sweatshirt, not cosplay. You know, like brand name.
Throw them in a locker now.
Sweatshirt.
Right.
What is
Get it over with.
Take their lunch money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, dude, that's the problem. Is that's why anime is so popular. All the anti-bullying stuff. You know, maybe kids need to be bullied a little bit. We've gotten a little out of hand in multiple different ways. So,
Finn, what do you think, my friend? Bless us with your first villain on your Mount Rushmore.
Well, I feel like someone else probably has this one as well. But I'm just going to go out. I'm going to go with a specific version of this villain, which is the Joker. But there's a specific version of it, which, Dagan, I bet you will have something to add to this. I'm not a big comic book guy. I don't really know that much about it, but it's specifically the Joker from The Killing Joke. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
So this came out in 1988 or 89 when I was like 10 or 11 when it came out. And as far as I'm aware, and Dagan, feel free to, or any of you, feel free to correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, but I think this was like one of the first times that one of these mainstream superheroes went like super, super dark. It's written by Alan Moore, who did Watchmen and a bunch of other stuff. And it scared the shit out of me when I was a kid, because again, I was in 5th or 6th grade. And so it tells like the origin story of the Joker, where he falls in the vat of chemicals, but it's like really gnarly the way they depict it, like his skin falling off and all this shit. And then he kidnaps and shoots Barbara Gordon, Commissioner Gordon's daughter, and like sends photos of it to Commissioner Gordon to fuck with him. And then somewhere along the way, Batman and Robin get involved, and he beats Robin to death with a crowbar. It like breaks his back and stuff, and it's just like really, really intense. Like, I mean, I would say even by today's standards, it's like pretty intense, but certainly for, 5th grade me, I was just like, holy shit. And it really made Joker seem, I was used to the old 60s Batman TV show where Joker was just this clown. But it made him seem like this like really deranged, like violent psychopath in a way that, as far as I'm aware, he hadn't been portrayed before. So that's mine. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, Dagan, or anyone else.
I love that. I mean, I love the Joker. I mean, what comic book character is more evergreen for just kind of redoing over and over again? We never get tired of it. You got your heroes, but he's probably the one villain who's just so interesting. Right, that you could just pick from that. You could just pick from him for forever. And the Killing, we ended up talking a lot about the Killing Joke. Interestingly enough, Colin and I on Knockback when we did the Arkham Asylum game.
Oh, okay.
And we talked a lot about, Alan Moore and Brian Boland, who illustrated that book, and that was a big one for me, Finn, the Killing Joke, because I had a friend in high school. I was starting to get really into manga. I was out of American comics for like a long time, like a decade. And he's the one who introduced me to like big boy graphic novels with the Killing Joke. And he was like, you got to see how, like the gravity of this is so serious, like, with Robin's death and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's what kind of brought me back into the fold with American comics and The Dark Knight in particular.
And that's kind of around the time that graphic novels, it was like very early to the idea of graphic novels being a thing that, you know, an adult would want to read.
I love that. I love that. I love pulling from that Joker because it's really, he's just sinister. You know,
yeah, really scary.
So super scary. And you know what? That brings me to mind. So I won't take too long. This is my first one. I think you guys could have seen this one coming, but I had to go with this. Like any Gen Xer worth their salt, my first one has to be Darth Vader, right? I grew up with him. I was 3 going on 4 when Star Wars came out. I think I first started to get into Star Wars when I was like about 6. So by the late 70s. And in particular, I'm channeling the initial 3 Star Wars films, Darth Vader. What's cool about it, though, even to this day with Darth Vader, that a lot of us could argue that the prequel films came along and kind of besmirched the whole thing, but not really, because they kind of, if you feel like I do, ruined Anakin. But there's still Vader, like actual adult evil Vader, kind of preserved because we have the first 3 films to give us Vader. And you know what else is cool? I don't really care for the sequel films, but the one thing I could probably choose from those movies that I did like was Vader's grandson talking to the melted helmet. I thought that was so cool. That was a cool way to bring him forward. And probably you guys could argue, I don't know if you guys agree, but I know Colin is of the same sentiment, that modern Star Wars gave us probably the best glimpse of Darth Vader ever with the end of Rogue One, where this villain, this kind of cartoony villain that we were really used to, became scary for the first time. I mean, that was a horrifying 2-minute glimpse.
I've watched that. I've just gone on YouTube and watched that probably 10 times since I've seen that movie. Good. That one shot when he's walking down and he puts his hand out and he grabs and all their guns just fly out of their hands. I'm like, that is such a fucking amazing shot.
It's perfect.
And they use the Force in all these different ways. It's reminiscent of the Bespin shot where he puts his hand up and just stops Han from shooting him or whatever, which is another amazing Vader
It's
moment.
It's a little more of that.
Right.
It's very inspired, like that I like Rogue One a lot, but that last few, I mean, very, very inspired. Just perfectly, you could see somebody took it from their head and just put it on the screen.
The part of Darth Vader,
be a Star Wars fan.
Sorry,
no, not at all.
The aspect of Darth Vader that, and I'm also not like, I mean, I like Star Wars, but I'm not like a Star Wars nerd. But I went down the rabbit hole like maybe a year ago or something on Darth Vader, because there's like a body horror aspect to Darth Vader that is like really like surprisingly dark and kind of grisly for, I mean, Star Wars, despite the fact that it's like a bunch of 38-year-old dads that are into Star Wars now. It's a kid's movie. But, with him getting dismembered and, pieced together and sort of the kind of just, grisly sort of reality of him being this like mutilated corpse that's kept alive with technology and stuff. It's like a pretty frightening aspect of it that when I was a kid was like really kind of chilling to me.
Yeah, that's totally well put. I agree. It's it's like Frankenstein's monster almost.
Right.
The Emperor's Frankenstein monster.
You forget how cybernetic he is until you see the end of the last prequel film, and then you're like, oh yeah, he lost almost all his limbs.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, Dagan and I always laugh about that scene where he's just cutting off all of his limbs, basically. It's like, oh my God.
Like Monty Python.
Yeah, really. It's exactly like it. That's a great choice, Dig. I think Vader, there are moments, I know people make fun of the end of A New Hope when Vader and Obi-Wan fight and how unfulfilling that is. And I understand that, but I do think the moment when he fights Luke in Cloud City with one hand is a really awesome moment. And it's subtle. They don't make a big show of it. He just never puts a second hand on the lightsaber, basically. The entire time, and it's just kind of
super OP.
Yeah, like whatever. And I thought that was brilliant. He's great. They really did ruin him, and for me, in some sense, not because Hayden Christensen as him doesn't even bother me, and Jake Lloyd, it's like whatever, dude. There was something about him in the Force and the way the Force interacted with him and his control of it in a spiritual way that was really fascinating. So when they're like, oh, it's the middle, like just that one line about the blood test. And Obi-Wan doing the blood test ruins the whole.
It's such a weird idea.
And that's why when we did the rewriting Star Wars episodes of Knockback, the laborious rewriting of the new movies or whatever, and I just made it into like a religious saga because I'm like, that's what's always so interesting about Star Wars anyway, is the Force is a religion.
Yeah, we got to take the Star Trek back out of Star Wars. Yeah,
Right.
Dag, also, I like Darth Vader. Not that this is like who's the most evil. You don't have to be the most evil to
Right.
be on this list. Potentially, you can be cool, but
sure.
Obviously there's the meme or the joke about Darth Vader. He's Space Hitler, which it's like, yeah, I get it. And it is funny when you think about it. It's like kids have Darth Vader t-shirts. It's like, dude, he kills everyone on a planet. Like he kills the entire planet. Everyone on it is dead. So it's like, yeah, he's pretty evil. You know,
but he has a cool helmet.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and he has a cool voice. So
the iconic look is such a huge part, because I almost thought for a brief blip, I said, let me choose Governor Tarkin.
Yeah.
Because there's something so
Tarkin.
interesting, especially the perspective of the first film. It's like, here's this guy, this kind of wizened, old, crinkly, wrinkly dude, but he obviously has Vader's respect. He's like the only one, right, that you see like, who is this guy?
Vader, release him.
But he just doesn't. And you could argue too that Tarkin was never really ruined, right? Like Vader, especially if you, because we learn all about Vader and his origins, and we see who played him as a kid and all that kind of stuff. Tarkin's kind of preserved in mystique, but he just doesn't look as cool. You know, Vader is the action figure. He's the toy. He's just like an image from my youth. And again, like we got so accustomed to Vader that he became like this toothless, almost cartoony villain until Rogue One. Then it was like, no. This is who this guy is. That's why I loved about, so there are, look, we talk about Star Wars a lot negatively, but there are some positives for modern Star Wars, right? Very few.
We won't talk about Star Wars anymore. I can't take it. All right. My second choice is, and I guess this would be represented by a specific figure on the visual Mount Rushmore, but it's really more of a race. And I would say the Cylons from Battlestar Galactica, the reimagined Battlestar Galactica.
For a second.
Oh, why? What did you think I was going to say?
You're about to call out an entire race. I was like, oh no.
Whole race.
Wow, what have I signed up for? Now I know how Jimmy felt.
Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, my, yeah. Finn's like, oh, no. Yeah, that's funny. That'll be a great Lockmore moment for edits, too. But the Cylons I would take together, very similar. It's not really very similar, but somewhat similar to Skynet and other things in sci-fi and futuristic sci-fi, where it's actually a network. And what you learn about the Cylons, and I'm not going to spoil Battlestar Galactica deeply here. You really should watch it. I think it's a great show. Is the Cylons kind of make decisions together. They're like a hive mind in some way.
So are they like the Borg of Battlestar Galactica?
I don't know enough about Star Trek to be able to make that.
I don't know anything about Battlestar.
Yeah, totally understood. So just to put it out there for people that are curious, and you can watch Battlestar Galactica front to back on Peacock right now. Not that I have Peacock, but I got Peacock when we did Battlestar more recently on Knockback, so that's how I know that. But Battlestar Galactica is about a race of humans, like humans, on these planets, these fictional planets in this system, and they create a race of robots called the Cylons to do all their menial tasks, and the Cylons become self-aware and rebel. And it's really, really well done because we don't see any of this in the show. You see none of this in the show. The creation of the Cylons, the rebellion, and then there's an armistice between the Cylons and the humans, and the Cylons agree to go away. And they disappear. And they come back on the 50th anniversary of the armistice and literally obliterate the human planets, and just basically expunge humanity from existence in revenge for what they did to them or whatever. And this Battlestar Galactica now picks up, and Battlestar Galactica is about the Cylons' pursuit of the remaining humans that are alive, because they're basically trying to extinguish all of them. And in this massive act of revenge. And the only humans that are left alive in Battlestar Galactica are the humans that were in ships between the planets when they were attacked. So there's 70,000 of them or whatever people. And the Cylons are just in this endless pursuit of the humans. And what you discover about them is that they've basically started making organic versions of themselves. And the Cylons are interesting because they're mega deep, where they have consciousness, and then they have their own problems internally, and they have their own disagreements between the models and all of this. And the way they treat other Cylons, that's why I always encourage people to watch it, because it's not really a sci-fi story. It's a philosophical and religious story, if anything, over a science fiction kind of I don't know, visual treatment. It's not to say there's not cool shit in there. There is, but it's not really what it's about. So I wanted to give a shout out to the Cylons because I think that they're some of the most compelling, truly compelling villains in all of fiction that I've ever seen. Certainly in science fiction, which I do love. And they feel like the most compelling, realistic outcome of what you might expect would happen if you made a race of robots and enslaved them in fields and factories. And you only learn about this, you don't ever see it. But like basically just treat them like complete shit and throw them around and do anything. And then you don't realize that they've become aware. And then they just turn on you. But then they take the very human instinct of revenge and they put it in the back of their minds. And then they just wait, and I think it's good shit. I don't know if anyone else agrees or has seen it. I'm sure some people that have listened or listening have seen it, but I got to give a shout out to the Cylons. Dave, how do you feel about that?
I love it. I love the outside the box thinking of taking a whole group. I remember thinking because I'm old, the 70s Battlestar, the TV series, thinking the Cylons were I really, as a young kid, thought that Battlestar unfairly was a take on Star Wars. You have the swashbuckling Han Solo pilot type character. You have the Cylons, which were the stormtrooper proxy and all that. But there's so much more to it that I'm not even sure you can conflate one with the other. They're so different. But I always thought the Cylons were like that other group of really cool looking, sinister, army of robotic troopers. I thought the stormtroopers were robots when I was a kid too, like the Cylons. But, a whole different take with that sort of stainless steel look and the beady red electronic eye that goes back and forth and the menacing sound, and that there's just an endless, infinite amount of these things. I love it.
And it was cool how they worked in the old models too, right? One of the cool things, it's not really, I guess it is kind of a spoiler, but in the show is that ultimately you find that like the old Cylons from the old show are like incorporated in this world, like they're older models. So the thing I was thinking about them and I'm like, there really is no leader of the Cylons. And I don't think that's really a spoiler either. Like number 6 is obviously the most famous Cylon,
right? The
beautiful blonde,
right?
That's Trisha Helfer, I think. Right. That's like her famous role. And so there's her, but really they're not led by anyone. They actually are like a monotheistic cult, basically. And that's the other weird thing too. They basically find God and all this kind of weird shit. It's very cool. Oh, Finn, if you're a sci-fi nerd in any way, I would recommend just watching the miniseries that start like the first season begins with a miniseries. That's basically what happens or whatever. It was on Sci-Fi, I think, over like a 3-hour movie style thing at the time.
I've touched a boob, so I don't watch sci-fi.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. So, fair enough. And this was when it was, not SYFY, which made it even worse in some way, or better, depending on how you look at it. But if you're ever interested, just watching that will tell you if you're into it or not. And if you know Star Trek, I don't see why you wouldn't be into this. But Star Trek, I don't know anything really about. It's too daunting, maybe a little too nerdy for me.
In my defense, I watched it when I was in like 5th grade, so I didn't know any better.
Okay.
And then I touched a boob and it lost all interest.
Just one.
It's just one.
Singular.
It's interesting you say that because I lived with a gay guy, James, in San Francisco for years. And so he never touched a boob probably. And maybe that's why he never got over Star Trek. And he had all of Star Trek, The Next Generation on VHS.
See, it checks out.
God. Yeah.
Which was like, I just loved that. And this was, by the way, in 2007. When I lived with them, 2008.
Yeah.
It's an interesting personal brand, the gay guy with Star Trek VHS collection many years after VHS was a viable format. I like it.
Yeah. What I remember about him, and I said it before, we lived with 3 different Jameses over time. So there was gay James, bi James, and straight James, and he was gay James. And what I remember about him, drove a really, really nice car, like mega nice car. Had his entire room covered in shelves with the VHSs of Star Trek. And we would play D&D together. And he loved the game Shogun, which is like this obscure board game from the 80s.
Yeah.
That I absolutely loved. I think they renamed it Samurai Warrior and re-released it more recently. But we'd play the 80s version of it. And he was just and we would play Risk and games like that. He was so good. I don't think I ever beat him in anything. It was horrifying. But then he ended up moving in with his boyfriend and moved out of the house finally.
What an interesting dude. How did he dress? Was he a good dresser?
He kind of dressed like a dad. To be honest, he was a dad. He actually was married and his sons used to come over and like, you know, on weekends to like, you know, his visitation or whatever. So he dressed kind of like in polos and like a tucked in tee. He was a really sweet guy. I don't even know really how to get in touch with him anymore, but he was one of the nerdiest, and in a total complimentary way, one of the nerdiest people I have ever met. And one of his obsessions actually was when we would play D&D, he would love ordering round table pizza and getting it delivered. I miss
round table pizza.
Yeah. Round table pizza is such a unique thing. Do you know what?
You need a whole knockback on 80s and early 90s pizza if you haven't done that.
That's a great idea. I'm writing that down. Idea. That's a really great idea.
That's a great
Chuck E. Cheese, Showbiz. There's a lot of lore there with Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz also.
Showbiz, yeah.
I love that. I've written this down in the endless stack of notepads. That's a great idea, Dig. We should definitely
how many great games of Double Dragon and Ninja Gaiden and whatnot, you know, did I play at the Pizza Parlor in 1988? It was just the peak of human existence. There's nothing better than that when you're seriously, you know, in 5th grade.
Amen.
It was fun seeing it. We used to go to Ragtime Pizza, which was our local pizza shop, and they had a slot for 2 arcade machines next to and it was fun going in, and they would actually, I don't know what was that all about? Like was one of them into it or something, or the owner into it? Because they actually did swap machines like constantly.
Yeah, they had a nice rotation. I don't know if they were on like some sort of subscription or something where these guys would come and switch things out, but you go in there and be like, and then you'd get disappointed because they'd switch out Street Fighter 2 or they'd switch out something like that, and you're like, damn. Or there'd be a pinball machine.
They switched out Street Fighter 2 for World Heroes. Fuck.
Yeah, dude, that's
Dagan would be the only one that would have liked that.
I hate World Heroes. I hate World Heroes. I love SNK. Hate World Heroes. Yeah, but they did. They kept a nice, fresh rotation of games, relevant games. And you know what? It probably made business sense, right? It probably kept the kids coming in, grab a slice and a Coke, crank $2 worth of coins into Double Dragon. You know what I mean? So it probably behooved them to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Right? World Heroes was Earthquake in that one? The fat guy with the chain?
No, that's Samurai Showdown.
Oh, that's Samurai Showdown. Okay.
That's what I always wished for when I saw the Neo Geo, the SNK console, but it was always World Heroes or World Heroes Jet,
Magician Lord,
which was a really blatant ripoff of Street Fighter. Probably their only mistake. SNK's only mistake as far as...
Is that where Dan comes from?
No, Dan is just
he was a knockoff
to make fun of SNK in general.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
he was like a parody of World Heroes being a pathetic imitation of Street Fighter, as I recall.
I loved that character just in like when he would do his super, but like nothing would come out.
His super taunt.
Yeah, and he would do the rolling taunt with the select button.
Fireball would fizzle out right in front of him.
Yeah, it's very, very clever and funny character.
I want to see somebody win a tournament with Dan. I'm sure there's some weirdo out there that's done it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know how unbalanced he is. Is there a way to use him? I don't know enough about Street Fighter Alpha specifically but Street Fighter Alpha 3, shout out to Street Fighter Alpha 3. That was a fucking jam, wasn't it? All right. Dustin, let's go on to you, my friend. Your second.
My second choice. I made rules for myself that Dagan didn't require. I wanted to do one anime, one movie, TV, one movie, and then one video game. So I'll do my TV one, and that's Tony Soprano, who he's, you know, we talked about this yesterday, Colin, on Sacred Symbols. And for the people who didn't listen to that he's not the first anti-hero, of course. No one's saying that. But The Sopranos overall as a show was kind of the beginning of the anti-hero TV popularity in terms of, you think of like Mad Men and Breaking Bad, of course.
I would agree with that. And can I just interrupt you? What would be one before that at all?
I don't know.
An anti-hero?
Yeah.
Anti-hero.
On TV
like a true anti-hero. Would it be like Griswold or something? Like seriously. Is that like...
Batman maybe, but not the TV versions.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt us. I just wanted to say that I would almost argue to your point that it's maybe even the first of its kind. Yeah.
It's funny. Well, I was just realizing, I mentioned Breaking Bad and Mad Men, but I just searched like anti-heroes on TV. And you look at it now, it's like, okay, so House, Dr. House, anti-hero. Frank Underwood, also anti-hero. Dexter, anti-hero.
Dexter,
like, there's just, it's endless.
It's all of them
House
now.
is an anti-hero? Because he's not nefarious. Like the other guys
he's a drug addict or something.
I guess that's kind of a personal faux pas, though. I would argue against that, just because like Frank Underwood is obviously like undermining the American government, for instance.
Right.
That's a little different, in my opinion.
Yeah. But with Tony in general, it's that weird thing, and that's what makes these shows so appealing, is that you shouldn't root for him. He is a bad person through and through. But you see these glimpses, and this is what makes the show so great, is that you think of all these, gangster movies or, mafia type stuff, and you see them in the action. But these dudes have families. What is it like when they go home and see their family life? And you can see part of Tony trying. There's some part of him that tries, but he can never quite get there. And then ultimately, I mean, you see him pay for it over and over and over again throughout the show where he just can't, he's trying, but he can't get it right. And so, and there are times too where you're like, Tony, that was a classy move. I'm glad I always think about this is the case too with Don Draper. Is that every once in a while, Don, you'd be like, fuck yeah, Don, that you may be an asshole, you're a scumbag, but you did the right thing right here. And I think that's also the case with Tony.
Yeah, there's they have their own set of principles.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Their own codes.
My two favorite Tony Soprano moments. Number one is when he goes to some restaurant that he's extorting or whatever, and they gave him pasta, and he's like, "This ain't fucking al dente." and the other one is, I think this is like a meme now. I'm not sure, but where he's like sitting there watching TV, eating salsa out of the jar.
Yeah, dude. I always think of
he rules.
I think of him when he's like getting in the fight with what's her face, his wife. I can't remember her name.
Camilla.
Camilla, yeah. And he's like, "This has pulp in it. I don't like it with pulp." And then she like throws the phone at him, So
in the driveway,
driveway, yeah.
It reminds me of the Mad TV, the late '90s Mad TV like lampoonings of them, which were perfect too, with like Will Sasso and those guys playing.
Will Sasso played a great,
Oh, I gotta see that,
dude. Yeah, there's one where it's like, do you remember the old TV channel PAX? It was kind of like a family-friendly local channel type thing. I don't know what it was. It probably turned into something else, but there was like
kind of vaguely Christian.
Yeah, exactly. And so they had like a commercial for Sopranos on PAX, and it was, and there'd be a scene with all the stuff cut out of it. It's so funny. They used to do it like every week. But anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you again.
No, yeah. So I picked Tony just because I like him. You don't want to root for him, but you do. And he's kind of the, like I said, not the genesis or the beginning of the anti-hero, but really the archetype for what created so many amazing television shows.
Yeah, well said. And I know this is kind of a closed question now because of James Gandolfini's death, but there was this will they, won't they kind of with the show for a minute, like what did the ending really mean? And I think they didn't David Chase say something in an interview that kind of gave it away.
Yeah, he has.
Which is kind of a bummer, but yeah, I agree with you. I love The Sopranos. I think it's a wonderful show. I've seen it through probably 4 or 5 times, and I would like to watch it with Micah because I think she would love it. I just think it's one of those ubiquitous shows. And I'd also argue, although it's not the first of its kind, that it is the show that people looked at and said like, oh, TV shows can be like really good, Yeah. And I think The Wire ended up being like that too, and others. But
sure,
you think about stuff that was on at the same time on HBO, like shows I liked, like Arliss or something, where it's like no one cared about those shows. The Sopranos was, where it's like, oh, this is cinematic quality storytelling.
It was the template for prestige TV for sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
Blaze the trail. Yeah.
And it's that's what's so funny. We make fun of it on the show on a constant basis, and in my life too, of HBO rebranding to Max or whatever. And it's like, imagine having that brand. And like one of the very few brands that mean anything, where people automatically connect it with quality in your mind, and they prove it over and over and over again. Oh, Game of Thrones. Oh, Last of Us. Oh, Sopranos. Oh, The Wire. Blah 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 blah.
Yep.
No, we're gonna rename ourselves to Max. It's like, okay, I don't like. Can you even believe it? This is why I know that people
Xbox
in positions
rebranding
of power,
to Connect.
Yeah. I know people in positions of power. There's just so many of them that literally don't know what they're doing. I cannot even believe it.
Rebranding. It's essential. Like in branding and advertising, like it's just a thing where you're supposed to do it every 10 or 15 years. Like we have this budget, I guess we just do it. It's almost like this thoughtless thing that just, just like this, it's a cyclical thing that has to happen. They don't even question it.
Well, with HBO, they did have a real mess on their hands because they had HBO, HBO Go, HBO Max, and I feel like there might have been even one more, and it was totally unclear how you got access to these things and what content was in each one and why. And it's just like, why do all these exist? They should have just made them all one thing that's all called HBO, and you access all of them from HBO.com. But I think they had deals in place with cable carriers and whatever, that they couldn't do that for some reason. And they just really made a complete mess of that brand.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, to your point, you're absolutely right, Finn. I think, and you would know the marketing of it a lot better than I do, but when Warner started combining Discovery and CNN and all these things too, that really fucked it up. And I think that was the entire point. But I'm like, don't you understand? Just say CNN will be on HBO now.
Right.
Well, how is that so hard? In fact, that probably helps that brand to be associated with HBO. Dummies. Anyway, Finn, it is your turn. I'm ranting and raving over here like a lunatic.
Well, I'm going to go with another anime pick. And again, I'm not a big anime guy. People listening to this will think I'm a bigger nerd than I actually am. But it would be Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan.
Oh, nice.
Which, like, that's one of the few manga that I have like read the entire thing. I was like waiting for fan translations of every issue the second it dropped. I mean, just what an incredible story. And in particular with Eren, what a just like heartbreakingly brutal, sad story. I guess I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but just incredibly brutal. And then he, turns from being one thing in the beginning of the series to being just like an absolute psycho in the end. And it just, I guess it's hard for me to go into more detail without spoiling it, but
Finn, did you see he got when they did the anime awards, his character was nominated for best protagonist and antagonist in the same year?
Perfect. Yes. Perfect. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Just
I love it.
One of the best turns of all time. And I personally did not see it coming at all. There's like a particular moment kind of halfway through the series where you're just like, oh, holy shit. I just like I see everything that happened in the past 100 chapters in a completely different light now. In a way that's like, it's very hard to pull off a twist like that. And he's kind of at the center of the whole thing.
Yeah, it's interesting thing because with that, I don't know anything about that. I didn't know. So there's a manga and an anime, right? Is that?
Yeah, correct.
So, and the anime just ended, right?
The manga's been done for a while. Like it's always the manga first, then anime. So the anime finally just wrapped up like 3 weeks ago, I think.
So when I still lived in California, so this was probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I sat and watched in one night the whole first season. I think it was on Netflix of Attack on Titan. And I was I don't know, man. I was so horrified by it. Yeah. Like it was so good, and
it's
I was
brutal.
Especially those interstitial things where there's a lot of text and stuff, and I would pause it and read it and whatever. And I was really intrigued by it. And then I just never went back to it, mostly because I was watching a sub of it, and I'm sure there's dubs of it, and my attention span is so broken that I'm like, I can't pay attention to this right now because
that's why I read manga. I can't handle the anime. Is like, I can read 5 chapters of the manga in the time. And I watch it, or I pay attention to it for the story, not the art, because the art in the manga is not great. I'd be interested to know what you think, Dagan. But to me, the art in the anime, at least the first season, which is the only one I've watched, was like breathtaking to me.
Oh, gorgeous.
Dude, and it sucks. It takes a nosedive by the end.
Does it really?
Parts of the final season, I don't know if it was production was rushed or something like that, but
it was definitely rushed.
It was not good. And they start to implement more and more like CGI characters like that are, I know a lot of anime has CGI you don't know about, but this was obvious CGI Titans that looked bad. But sometimes
it was really dicey. It could hit or miss. And Isayama's manga train was rolling so fast that I think they felt some sort of pressure to keep up with the anime, and studios like Bones and Production IG and these like vetted animation houses, legendary animators and animation directors, they just couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of cheats.
That's a shame to hear, because that's one of these stories that I think is going to stand the test of time. So it's a bummer to hear that, they didn't give it the kind of legacy that it, deserves.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, it's special. It got me back into, I talk about this all the time on the various shows. It got me back into anime. It was one of those things I heard such a din that I had to respond. I was like, all right, let me see what this is all about. And then trying to get Colin. We got to get you back on the AOT train, Colin. Just at least to get through seasons 2 and 3. Which
Oh, it's so good.
Favorite.
It's
Dude, I love
incredible.
the whole idea. I love the whole visual of it's scary as fuck. I was really intrigued.
So
by
much better too. Once you get to the big twist, it will blow your mind.
Yeah,
I would like to. I think about it a lot. I don't even know where where does one watch it now?
Funimation still, I think.
I think you can watch most of it on Netflix still.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. I still actually have Netflix. So. Because I was thinking about canceling even. I've canceled almost everything at this point. And I was thinking about even canceling Netflix because I don't even watch it.
Maybe not. I'll
figure it out. I can always buy it a la carte as well. I don't mind doing that.
Read the manga. It's faster.
Yeah, I could read. I've never, I don't want to say never. I have Mega Man and Dragon Quest manga. Those are the only two things I've ever even
those
attempted.
are good ones, though.
Dagan got me my first Dragon Quest manga, actually.
Yeah,
like my first Japanese.
Toriyama,
what would be right to left kind of.
Still the best. Yeah. Still only ever had 2 assistants, as far as I know. Draws almost everything himself to this day, which is insane. I was like, how is that possible?
Yeah, it's awesome.
But anyway, yeah, man. Well, listen, for my number 2, I had Tony Soprano too, so I'm going to happily slide into my runner-ups and just slide one in there. But let me just say something about Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot about this, what Dustin and Colin said earlier, especially. I watched the whole series 3 or 4 times, and that's probably not even counting specific moments that I just jumped to an episode I really like. And he is one of those guys, right? This guy's a homicidal maniac. He's a straight-up murderer. He's a sociopath. He's a psychopath. He's a serial cheater. Poor Carmela. He wreaks psychological torture on both his children. And I still cannot articulate why you root for this guy. I mean, in any fiction, I've never seen anything like it. It's enigmatic. But you are, to the last minute, to those last moments in that last episode, rooting for him. It's I can't even put another character into that same category as far as like pulling for somebody who's deplorable. I mean, now, one thing about Tony Soprano, and, shout out to the writing and just how ingenious it is, and David Chase and Matthew Weiner, who's one of the head writers on the show and everything. And of course, spun off to create Mad Men and everything. But there's something about, you do understand that what this character grew up with, what he suffered from, what his parents handed down to him, that sort of thing. So there is some sort of empathy that you have for the character, maybe because it does go into his childhood quite a bit. I'm not even talking about Many Saints of Newark. I'm talking about in the actual core show. There's something there, but still defies reason why you would root for this dude. If you knew this, if this guy was your neighbor in real life, you would be begging for the cops to come and put him away for 25 years, just to get him out of your periphery. So it's really interesting. But I'm happy to do this because I didn't have a comedic one in here. And I was thinking when I was creating my list, who's first of all, my Mount Rushmore is going to look really interesting. I'm curating the visual. My Mount Rushmore is going to be pretty funny. But I was thinking, who's a villain who made me laugh? And dude, I have to give it to Dr. Evil.
Yeah, dude, it's so funny. That's on my long list here as well.
So he's so funny. Shout out to Mike Myers. I mean, I love that he's kind of a send up of mad scientists and Bond villains and stuff, but there's just and kind of like the brilliant foreign scientist, but also the serial fuck up. Like he could create all this badass stuff, these hideouts and these contraptions and everything, but he just can't figure out how to stop this one super spy. It's foible after foible and everything. It's just and this is the way Mike Myers plays both characters, the antagonist and the protagonist. There's something just special about those first 3 movies.
Did he write those also?
What'd you say, Finn?
Did he write those movies?
I think
that's a good question.
I'll look for you. I feel like he co-wrote them because I feel like I saw something about the guy who. Jay Roach is the director. That's the guy I'm thinking of. He is listed as the writer. Finn.
Mike Myers is?
Yeah. On IMDb, he is the writer. Yeah.
Okay.
Jay Roach is the guy I'm thinking about who is the director. I saw something about him.
Yeah, Jay Roach is married to Susanna Haas, I think.
Right.
And that so forms this weird collective. But
right.
It's like Austin Powers is so good, and I don't know Michael Myers' filmography really since then, but it seemed like he used all his wizard powers in those 3 movies, and then he can't do magic anymore.
Well, you're not into Love Guru?
That did come after. You're right. I can't judge. I never saw that.
Yeah, I do. I've reflected on that too. Like, is it a lack of? Some people just don't want to do it anymore. Just I don't know what it is with him. He never milked Austin Powers, which is so strange. You know?
No, he didn't.
He did that Netflix show last year, the Pentaveret, which is based on a joke from So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Oh shit!
That the dad.
So it's a
talks
spin-off
about.
of Axe Murderer.
Yeah, well, sort of. Not really. So the dad in So I Married an Axe Murderer tells this joke about. Well, he's not telling a joke. He's just like rambling when he's drunk about these 5 people that secretly control the world. It's like the Queen, the Vatican, and then one of them's Colonel Sanders. That So I mean, they're the Pentaveret, and so then he made an actual Netflix show about the Pentaveret. That's not very good, but it's at least interesting. That's like, hey, he took this like cult movie from 1993, a joke from it, and then made a spin-off show.
Yeah, that is interesting.
That's cool.
Yeah, I wonder what his.
Can you do something so good that you just kind of like your powers just evaporate after? Because I feel like the Austin Powers movies, they're all good. Maybe they get a little bit more diluted with each progressive one, but so I think of the first. I was graduating from college when the first one came out, and that kept us when we were animating all night to like do our thesis films. That movie single-handedly on VHS kept us going.
The best scene in the whole movie to me is when he's doing the U-turn in the hallway.
Yeah.
Colin and I still talk about that when we're in like a parking lot situation. That's just a call out from 25 years.
It's amazing how durable those characters are, that people still make Dr. Evil, jokes on Twitter and stuff like that. It's really incredible.
So good. So good. I couldn't even think of another comedic villain. I think of specific movies like Doctor Strangelove or something that I would put in that high category of satire but as far as like something that had, more than one thing that had some sort of progression or, various films, it's gotta be Dr. Evil. So I'm happy to get a comedy one on there because initially I didn't have that on.
Yeah. Great minds, dude. I had that on my list because I have like 7 or 8 and I'm trying to mix them down as I go. It's not going very well for me. That helps me a great, that helps me a great deal. I'll go a little quicker here because I don't want to linger on this topic forever and keep Finn for like 5.5 hours. Like it's an episode of Sacred Symbols where we just,
hey, I'm here as long as you need me.
All right. Well, we appreciate that. So I'm going to select, Dr. Wily literally counts as a gaming villain, but I don't really count that because you don't really see him. It's more the idea of him and more of my obsession with Mega Man and my love of Mega Man, especially Mega Man villains. So I wanted to get him obviously on the list, but as far as video game villains, I thought about the compelling ones and there are lots of them. You have your Metal Gear villains and all sorts of different things, but my mind went to Kefka from Final Fantasy VI. And I always really liked this. Dagan and I are about to, well, actually, by the time this goes live, it'll already have gone live. Dagan and I are doing a knockback on Final Fantasy IV, which is a personal favorite of both of ours. And I think that that's an incredibly strong game. It's like playing it again, I'm like, damn, man, this game is so compelling and so sad. It's so sad. It's such an interesting how sad it is considering what it looks like. And you're just reading it, these little chibi things on screen. And it's like, Jesus Christ, this is horrifying. Like what's going on in this game. But what that game does miss is a meaningful villain. And Final Fantasy VI is, I think, the better game in most ways than Final Fantasy IV. I think Final Fantasy IV is like story and characters might be a little bit stronger, like its protagonists and stuff. But 6 wins the villain kind of race. I think in all Final Fantasy games, even Final Fantasy games with considerably stronger villains like Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy 16, I think has really strong villains too. Kefka's interesting because again, we're seeing this chibi 16-bit SNES game, but really what it's about is this massive political intrigue where this powerful kingdom is basically enslaving these creatures to rip their magic out of them and then place it into humans. And that one of the kingdom's, it's like an autocracy, one of the kingdom's generals, which is Kefka, and he's like the court mage or something like that, is basically like, oh no, that's not enough power, and just goes off and just takes everything over and kind of has a coup d'etat. And which I won't go any further into it. It's obviously a 30-year-old game, but I'll let people get to it. And we'll get to that game on Knockback eventually as well, no doubt about it. But Kefka to me is just very compelling because you don't really know if you play previous Final Fantasy games or even Dragon Quest games at that time or whatever, you kind of feel like he's the MacGuffin type character for a while, like leading you along until like the four fiends in Final Fantasy IV, as an example, or Boomerang Flash in Wild Arms. And he actually ends up being like the villain. And I'm not going to say what happens. Like, it ends up getting nuts, obviously, towards the end of the game with him. But it all starts like inconspicuously. And then he does like really weird shit in the game, like where he starts inserting himself. Like remember when he poisons the water at Doma? It's a huge part of the game. And it's like, what is this? What is going on? What about the Emperor and all of this stuff? And then the scene with him and Celis and the Emperor and the floating continent and all that kind of stuff. It's good shit. And a funny memory is when Final Fantasy Anthology, I think it was, came out in 99-ish, 2000 on PS1. That was Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI. They later released another compilation, which was Final Fantasy IV and Chrono Trigger, really bad ports of those games, actually. Mm. But Final Fantasy V and Final Fantasy VI on Final Fantasy Anthology is, I think, what it was. It was awesome. And I don't know if you guys remember this. It had like these FMV videos in the beginning of the games. And for the first time, you got these really great visuals.
Forgot about that.
Kefka has such a cool character design too. That's so unlike anything you would expect for the big bad of a JRPG at that time. You know, kind of, I don't know what you would call it, like the almost like clown-like kind of thing, and his laugh. I mean, it's such a distinctive character design. Yeah,
the laugh is key. Because I wonder if they would ever remake it, even if they remade it in that 2D HD, beautiful Octopath Traveler style, which would be kind of cool if they did that, or Triangle Strategy or whatever. How would you recapture that laugh in modern ways that would really capture that essence of it?
It'd be so hard.
Yeah,
it's like the Joker. It has a real Joker energy to it. Not physically intimidating, just psychopath.
He's crazy. Yeah. The first time you fight him in the mountains outside of Narish, I remember, and it's just it's like a beautiful version of his sprite, like a bigger version of his sprite. And as the game goes on, it just becomes more and more warped and crazy. And it's all because of this Magitech and the Espers and all the cool stuff that Final Fantasy VI is so special, dude. Oh my goodness.
It does not really get enough respect these days, in my opinion. I feel like everyone talks about Final Fantasy IV, which is a great game, but 6 to me is like the pinnacle of 16-bit RPGs.
I totally agree. And I think part of it too, Finn, I think is, there's been all this revision up and down with 7, and I think 7 is now in a really great place because of the remakes. And I've even admitted that I kind of started to hate 7 as a high schooler when I was kind of like mad that, especially in the PS2 era, when it seemed like role-playing games were being dumbed down and they just weren't as good anymore. And I was like, it's really this game's fault. Like, this game somehow ruined everything. And I could never really make that philosophical argument outside of my head. And then I finally came to terms with the fact that it was an awesome game. But I think 7's very high memory also hurts 6.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately,
it kind of overshadows it.
Yeah, which is a bummer. But 6 is, we'll get there. We have to get through 5 as well, which I haven't played since that PS1 release, because that was the first. Oh, no, actually, I played it on GBA as well.
The GBA that's the one you want to play.
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
That's good to know. I didn't know that.
And the Final Fantasy VI port on GBA is really good too. I remember I've told the story in the past that I went to get a Wii. I didn't pre-order one. So 2006, I was a senior at Northeastern, and I went to the mall at Prudential Center, and that was when I had that encounter with the guy at GameStop where I'm like, do you guys have any Wiis? And he's like, I do. And I'll never forget that as long as I live. And so obviously they didn't have any, and I didn't want to walk away empty-handed. So I bought Final Fantasy VI on GBA, and that's my memory of that.
That's the best GameStop story.
I'm really looking forward to your knockback on 5 and 6, especially 5, because that's one of my favorite games in the series that really, really gets overlooked. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Oh, that's awesome. I never played.
Yeah, 5 is interesting because obviously the robust class system is what, you know, it's key component, I think. And I think the characters because there's just fewer characters and the story's a little tighter. So I think that kind of stuff gets lost. Yeah, we'll get there. Promise you.
A lot of good personality. Yeah. But we'll save it for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm glad wasn't there a, what's that book, Boss Fight Books, I think they're called, or whatever, something like that. They did a Final Fantasy V book. Like a dude wrote this book about,
I have it. Yeah.
Oh, you have? Okay. Yeah. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. I also bought that. And,
is a strategy guide?
No, it's like a remembrance kind of.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm going to look it up.
Yeah, that's funny. You know what I'm talking about. Oh, so you really are, Finn's really a huge nerd. Let's add that to the Wikipedia.
You got the cred, man.
Let's add that to the Wikipedia page.
I got my, I still have my modded PS1 right here with with a burned copy of Hokuto no Ken from
Nice.
2000.
Jeez
What?
Louise. He's
Beautiful.
flexing right now.
Yeah.
That's sacred symbols level. Love that.
Beautiful burned physical media.
Yep.
That's amazing.
All right, so I leave it there with Kefka. Shout out to Final Fantasy VI. Go play it. It's available a la carte, obviously now on PS4/PS5, and you can also buy it as part of the Pixel Remaster collection. And you should just buy all of them. All right, Dustin, I think it's on to you, right? Is that the order we're going in? Yeah.
Yeah, it is. My next one is my video game choice. It's a bit obvious, but I'm a big fan, so I'm gonna have to go with Bowser being my more whimsical villain. Where, yeah, I guess he's evil. He, captures the princess and whatnot. He's not necessarily going out committing genocide or anything that we know of, but he just something about him I've always found to be super cool. He's got this awesome, character design, being like this giant turtle guy that breathes fire. I don't really mean because he's a Koopa, but I've always loved like the image of like you have tiny little Mario versus the giant Bowser. But where Bowser really starts to shine is in the various RPGs, and that's one thing Dagan and I have been talking about recently on Punching Up, either in Super Mario RPG or most familiar to me in the first Paper Mario, where you really see Bowser as this character who's kind of like this moron, but is also very lovable at the same time. And I love how they've kind of carried that over in a way that is really faithful in the new Mario movie as well. And obviously y'all laughed when it was like, oh, Jack Black is going to be Bowser. But then when you actually see it on screen and here, you're like, oh yeah, this is like absolutely perfect. I couldn't imagine it any other way. So shout out to Bowser, our boy. And dude, one of my favorite parts of Japan when I was in Super Nintendo World, when you go in to do the Mario Kart ride, they have a giant statue of Bowser that has to be 7 or 8 feet tall.
That's
I think it's
awesome.
huge. It's amazing. I was like, dude, I had to like bow to the king for
Is
a
it
moment.
like?
when I
Is it
saw
supposed to be like life size? Like
I would
that's how
imagine
big
so.
he is.
Yeah, it's definitely life size.
You mentioned
So-
he was lighthearted. I feel like maybe people on Reddit will demand like a grimdark reboot, a movie just called Bowser, where,
Right.
he eviscerates everyone and, impales people on his spikes and stuff like that, beats Peach to death.
The poster
Right.
is just the clown face from that thing he rides.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. With a
Oh,
bunch of like
yeah.
really
With
dramatic
blood.
lighting.
Yeah. No, I love that.
It's so
now,
funny.
let me ask you this, because one of my I love the Koopa kids. I've always thought they were really intriguing since
Yeah, me
Mario
too.
3 and Super Mario World. It's just I love that. Who's their mother?
Hmm.
Do we know this? Is there a mother?
Miyamoto answered this once, I think, and he said me. So
Did he really
that's about
say
the
that?
extent. There
said,
is
"This
some
is
quote.
Miyamoto."
I'm trying to
Oh,
remember.
boy.
Is this like the one where he's like, I saw a photo online of Mario and Luigi kissing one another. Please do not do this.
Please do not do this.
He's the best.
Please
We
do
talk
not
about him
do
a lot on the
this.
show. That is a real "there will be blood" thing. While Dustin looks this up, I just have
Yeah.
to say, Bowser. Hey, shout out King Koopa. That's what we used to call him back. The old people
Right.
remember that. But if Mario is what a lot of people argue, like the new Mickey Mouse, like universally recognizable, has surpassed Mickey Mouse. Mickey never had an enemy nearly as recognizable as Bowser. Like nobody knows Pegleg Pete or something
Right,
like
right.
that. So Bowser is like, as far as like cartoon villains, maybe the most popular one on the planet of all
Oh, yeah.
media. I'm not just talking about video games, right?
I'd love to
You
see the
take
design document for him at Nintendo where it's like he has 9 spikes on his back and
Yeah.
there are 3 lines around the shell. All that. It's like, all right, guys. I want to know who the mother. That's not a satisfying answer. In fact, that answer is just 10 times more disturbing than it even has to be.
Yeah. I linked you guys the video. I won't put it in the show because I don't want to get tagged or something by
Yeah.
Nintendo, but
Oh, yeah,
it's
they're
this
bad.
from it's called
They will
Mario
do.
Myths with Mr. Miyamoto. And then ask the question, do you know who Bowser Jr.'s mother is? And he like
Oh, wow. Okay.
nods and then just he's like me. So did Miyamoto fornicate with Bowser in some way? Is this what he's implying?
And if that's the case, is Bowser female? Like someone who's giving birth to
Asexual, maybe.
I have a very disturbing piece of information along the same lines. You guys remember Chippendale Rescue Rangers?
Oh, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
And you remember Gadget and,
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
Fly?
Yeah.
Did you know that there is a reboot of that from a few years ago where Gadget and the Fly have children together and they look like half rat, half fly?
No.
Wait,
It's real. It's real.
it's a Disney sanctioned thing?
Yes, it's real.
That's like a Disney Plus thing or something.
Yeah, something
Oh.
like that. It's
That
bizarre.
sounds like
brutal.
Disney meets Cronenberg.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved that show when I was a
Wow.
kid.
Like some David Lynch reboot of it.
Oh, I see this now.
That's
It's
really
horrifying.
Oh, is
Disney
this in
goes
the
out of their
movie?
mind.
In the new Chip
haven't
and Dale
seen
Rescue
it, something
Rangers
like that.
movie.
Yeah.
Dude, that movie is actually really good. They put there's like this joke about ugly Sonic in it. Like he's the rejected Sonic that they took out of the movie.
Oh, wow.
And he's like going around to conventions of like other washed up like old cartoons. That movie is actually really good.
I have to
Chip
watch
and
that.
Dale.
I've heard good
Interesting.
things about the writing.
It's kind of like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Not like it, but in that style where it's definitely appealing towards more the adults that watched.
Yeah, that
Chip
grew
and
up with.
Dale.
That's cool. I
Yeah.
like that.
All right, Finn, let's go on to you for your third one.
Okay, I'm going to return. Well, so you guys picked a couple video game villains. I'm very disappointed that neither of you chose Hot Cold Man from, I forget which Metal Gear game it was. Probably the best villain name.
I don't even know who that is, I don't think.
It's from, it might be from Peace Walker. I don't remember.
Oh,
I know
played that.
this dude. Yeah.
It's the most
Peace
Kojima
Walker.
name of
Yeah.
all time.
Peace Walker.
Yeah, Hot Cold Man.
Hot Cold Man.
Best name of all time.
I don't even. Yeah,
I'm going to go back to the world
of.
of. I'm going to go back to the world of prestige TV, and I'm going to choose the dad from Succession. Have you guys seen that show?
I have only
I
season
haven't.
I
one.
haven't.
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Oh,
so good. Like the best writing of any show ever, in my opinion. For anybody who hasn't seen it, the basic premise of the show is that there's this dad who is kind of modeled after like Rupert Murdoch, kind of, and he controls this media company, and he has a heart attack and is going to die, or so it appears in the first season. And the rest of the show is the kids kind of fighting over who's going to be the heir to his empire. So that's,
I watched this whole show. What am I talking about?
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The whole show is just people talking in conference rooms, but it's like,
It really is.
Yeah, but it's riveting because the writing is so fucking good and the characters are just so amazing and so hateable. It's really kind of the evolution of the Tony Soprano thing of you're like, I really want this person to not be such a piece of shit, but they keep letting me down, but I can't stop watching. I can't stop watching to be disappointed. But the one person on the show who I would say is just completely irredeemable and just a total asshole that you never like is the dad. And it's interesting how much, he controls the kids just by he's actually not in the show all that much, and they're all so worried about what dad would want and how their moves are going to look to him, and like they're all sort of doing so many things that are really not in their own best interest because they want to please him. And it's such an interesting character of somebody who, he very rarely on the show ever like threatens them or like does anything to sort of get in their way. It's almost just like he's gaslit them so much into wanting his approval that they, do his bidding without even having to be asked. And so he's just sort of this kind of case study in, control without like explicit control.
Yeah, love the choice. I don't know why I stopped watching that show either. I think the first season was on, and I watched that in California as well, and just never. And it's over now, right? It's done.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of a good time because there's that other HBO. I maybe to resubscribe to HBO soon because there's that other HBO show, The Gilded Age or something like that, or whatever. That's supposed to be excellent because I'm a huge Downton Abbey nerd, and people are like, "Oh, you'll really love that." So I got to check that out. So maybe the time is right for that too, for me to get back into that show. Dig, you said you watched it.
I'm still digesting the show. I got through the whole thing, and I won't spoil it, but I do think it has one of the great endings.
Yeah, I agree.
The ending is fantastic. It's up there with the ending of Sopranos for me. I was like,
the
holy
second
shit.
to last season, I would say, is the weakest one. It's still good, but it's a little bit, you're kind of like, they're just kind of redoing the same thing as the other seasons, but they wrap it up incredibly well.
it.
Yeah, no, you summed it up great. It's a show full of characters that you're just hoping are going to have some sort of arc.
Yeah.
And ... I won't ruin it.
Yeah. And yeah, if you're hoping for them to all kind of blossom into these great people that learn from their mistakes and overcome their flaws, you might be disappointed.
It's interesting. I'm still digesting the show, but that ending, I mean, really sorted up for me. I was like, all right, I'm glad. It made me appreciate watching it. I was like, I'm glad I got through this. That ending was fantastic.
Yeah. All right, Dave, let's go to you.
All right, so I got my iconic, legendary, cool-looking villain in Vader. Got my comedic villain in Dr. Evil. We talked about Tony Soprano, a villain that you somehow root for. I wanted to think about a villain, maybe of all villains I've known in my 49, almost 50 years, which is the one who's just out and out detestable, not one redeeming quality. And I got to go back to HBO. King Joffrey Baratheon. Oh my God. Shout out Game of Thrones. This was a character. I can't even think about a character. I don't even know a character this outwardly evil. He was just, it was talk about a show of the first few seasons, right? That you're waiting for a character to do something positive. Is this guy going to have any sort of, am I going to be able to kind of root for him even a little bit? You don't for 1 second. He's just an unapologetically evil dude. And it's delicious. The performance, everything about it. I don't want to ruin Game of Thrones. It's a great payoff with the character, but I'll leave it there. King, I think we know him briefly as Prince Joffrey Baratheon, but we know him most of the series as King Joffrey. And he's just this kid king who's like the most powerful king in the land. He wields the biggest stick for quite a while, and he throws that weight around. And it's just abusive relationship after abusive relationship. I mean, the guy comes from a very toxic lineage, but it all fell on.
And his genetics are probably a little fucked as well. No spoilers intended.
But I couldn't even think of another character that evil.
Yeah.
At least other characters you think of, like I had Judge Holden from Blood Meridian, which we did that Cormac McCarthy book on Knockback. It's an evil character, but he doesn't present himself as evil, right? He presents himself as helpful. Maybe sometimes he's, in some way he has, at least, he does positive things for the people around him, right? He's crafty. There's just not one component of Joffrey Baratheon that's good. He doesn't have a good bone in his body.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah. Good selection.
I love it.
Yeah. There are so many ominous scenes with him that are unnecessarily ominous. Like, there's that one scene where he's standing on the bridge between two towers with Sansa, and it's kind of implied that he could just push her off, or that she could push him off too, which is interesting. And then there's that scene with the crossbow in the bedroom or whatever, where it's like, why? It's just, there's that thing going around recently where it's the most hated television characters or whatever, and he's like very high on that list, I think. And so is Skylar White, which everyone's really upset about, because it's like, why is Skylar White looked at as like such a
that's interesting,
horrible character?
That's kind of sad. But yeah, he's the ultimate pull the wings off the bugs kid. He's like that kid who just probably from the moment he was born is like, this is a bad seed. You know what I mean? There's no changing it. It's his soul. It's just black.
All right, my final one is and I wanted to go with a fun one, like a performative one from a specific film or a rendition of something, and a character that I just absolutely love, and a lot of people don't, but I have to give him a shout out, is specifically Bane from Dark Knight Rises. Love it. Love this character. Love the performance. Tom Hardy, obviously. And I think it's interesting because I found the beginning of that film so compelling from the first time I saw it, where they're on the airplane and he's crazy and he's got the mask on and he's being interrogated and the everything goes awry, and it becomes very much like a James Bond kind of thing with the other plane coming. And I don't know, I've always really loved this performance and this character, and a little confused why people were a little hard on it, though I understand it was following up an Oscar-winning performance from a deceased actor who was never able to replicate that, even though he was intended to in the film. And so I understand that there's something about that, but hopefully in time, and I won't linger on this too long, but hopefully in time people will see that performance more for what it is. I think it's like really fun. Christopher Nolan just really captured the essence of what I think the potential of superhero movies could be in those films. And it's so sad that almost everything that I've ever seen since then is nowhere near the level of quality of those films. And I think the realistic kind of strange villain is cool. I never liked Bane back in the cartoon or anything like that. And where I knew a lot of these things from, I remember him being like accompanying Harley Quinn or Poison Ivy or whatever. And he was huge.
I'll tell you why I want another Nolan Batman movie. Did you guys know that there's a Batman comic where they show Batman's dick?
Whoa.
I don't think I knew this.
It's true. You can tell that he is circumcised.
Interesting.
It's, I mean, you can Google it if you want, probably not appropriate for YouTube, but you can Google it. He's changing and it just sort of shows the silhouette of it very deliberately. And I feel like Nolan would include that. So that's why I want another.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's ready now. Oppenheimer had his first movie with nudity, right? So, he was building up really with Oppenheimer to Batman's penis.
Right on.
Batman foreskin reveal.
Right on.
Oh, dude, that could be the name of Batman 4 Skin since it's the fourth movie.
And I'll move on from here. I just wanted to throw him out there. I did have a list of other ones that I was just thinking about. Like I wanted to give a shout out to Team Rocket. I always loved them. I always thought they were really funny in the cartoon, and I have my Team Rocket action figures back on my shelf over there. So I gave them a shout, and Psycho Mantis I threw out there too. Although I think that's probably I don't know where to begin with the Metal Gear villains. Fat Man 2 would be a one that I really loved as well. But I think that's pretty much. You ask me on a different day, and I'll probably have a different list. But those were the ones that came to mind for me. So yeah, I'll leave my list there. Dustin, let's go to you. Wrap it up.
My last one is a movie character. And this I think really comes down to the performance, and that is Agent Smith from The Matrix. I always think about the scene where he is interrogating Morpheus, and he's beating him up, and he's like talking just about his hatred for humans, and he's unique in the world of like the sci-fi robots take over humans, because obviously that's the story of the Matrix, but he very specifically he's not even really a robot. He's a program within the Matrix that hates his existence of being created to watch over this place, and eventually leads him to try to break out and take control. And dude, it's Hugo
Weaving.
Who's I have to say he might be one of like the top underrated we talk about like really, really great actors all the time. He's amazing in any movie he's in. Think about him in like Lord of the Rings also.
Elrond,
dude. Yeah.
To Smith, that's insane. That's a range.
So yeah, Agent Smith, dude. And here's the thing too, is that I know that the second and third Matrix movies have issues, but that second movie, when there's the part when there's like hundreds of him and like Neo's trying to fight hundreds of them, and then there's they're like lined up in the rain and stuff like that. Just the art direction and the cinematography of those on point. Absolutely love those. I still would say that I love those movies despite all three of them, despite their flaws.
The art direction really is like iconic. I mean, there's so much, there's all this like Y2K revival stuff now of, 19-year-old kids dressing like the characters from that movie. And I mean, to me, that says a lot. I really value longevity, things that made an impact in the moment and then continue to be relevant decades later, like really means a lot to me. And I think the art direction of that movie is like still iconic.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely a great choice. I haven't seen the second and third Matrix movies in a long time. So I don't really, I remember not liking the third one really at all. The second one, didn't they come out really quick? Like,
like a year apart.
So.
Right.
Within a year of each
They were
other.
filmed at the same time or whatever, I think. Something like that.
So bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I even feel about them. I love the first one though.
Oh, it's so
just as a standalone film, it's just really wonderful. Yeah.
It's really one of the iconic works of cyberpunk. It never, like Finn was saying, it hasn't lost its luster at all.
It's interesting too, because I still remember getting home from the movie theater. What was that? 99, maybe 2000, something like that. And I immediately went on to my computer in my room and got the, whatever was on Ask Jeeves or whatever the fuck it was, InfoSeek, and tried to find and did find a replicant of the screensaver for the Matrix thing. And I remember doing that, thinking that was so cool. And then ultimately everyone had that screensaver.
Fucking badass back then, didn't it?
It was cool as hell.
Yeah.
And then you set it down to like 2 minutes, so it goes on really quick, and then you stand back and just look at that and you're like, yeah, man.
I'm in the Matrix.
Finn, let's stick with you for your final entry.
My final one is another return to the world of prestige TV. Perhaps a little bit obscure, but I'll choose it anyway, which is Lalo from Breaking Bad, and specifically from Better Call Saul. He makes some small appearance on Breaking Bad, but Better Call Saul, I think season 4 or 5 is when he sort of comes in. And I thought the first half of Breaking Bad was a little bit slow. I get it. I respect it, but it was a little bit slow for me. It's when Lalo comes in that show really becomes like incredible to me. And for anybody who hasn't seen it, basically Lalo is, without spoiling it, is this, is a member of the, drug cartel family that comes to sort of clean up this mess. And his character kind of reminds me of Hans Landa from Inglourious Bastards, Christoph Waltz's character, where they're like very charming and friendly, but with all this like, menacing violence just lurking beneath the surface, where you feel like if you say the wrong thing to this person, they'll like literally cut your head off. And so every scene that he's in is just so incredibly tense, because you're wondering, like, is he going to let him get away with it, or is this going to make him snap and he's going to explode into violence? And he does. I won't. There's a scene in which there's. I won't spoil it, but the scene where there are some people coming after him is like one of the coolest moments in that whole series. And to me, he makes that show, as great as Bob Odenkirk is. I think the show doesn't really come alive until Lalo is added.
Dude, I love it. That is a really legitimately frightening character.
Yeah.
Right. It's that murderousness backed up by genius level intelligence and resourcefulness. Like you're talking about that scene where they're coming after him, and he knows exactly what he's going to do. He's got it all figured out.
Right.
There's just no this is the devil himself.
You're like, oh, they got him this time.
I was thinking Gus Fring.
He's great too.
I like this answer better. I really do. Yeah, he was a legitimately, like, I remember watching that and trying to put myself in Saul's position or whoever, Gus's position.
Yeah.
And being like, this guy would be impossible to deal with. I would just have to lay down and bury myself. There's no way to best this guy.
Yeah. Terrifying character.
Terrifying. I love that answer.
Love the choice.
Yeah, so good. So good.
And Dave, we'll leave it with you.
All right, guys. Last one. This is one that's near and dear to my heart. A lot of this probably, in all fairness, because I love this movie, but I had to have an animated entry. I had to have something anime. So I'm going to give it to one of my favorites of all time, in Akira, Tetsuo Shima. From Akira, from the 1988 film. And again, a lot of this, I'm an artist, so I think about the way a character looks. So you think about the iconic look of Tetsuo later in the film, right? He's got the white t-shirt and jeans, and he's got the red cape, and he's on his self-made throne in the destroyed Olympic Stadium, wielding his telekinetic powers around, right? But there's something interesting about the character in that he kind of starts off as, well, these are warring biker gangs in futuristic Tokyo. It's like falling apart, but so they're no real heroes, but he kind of starts off as protagonisty. He's in the bike gang, but he's the runt of the litter. He's the little brother. He's the one that's kind of perpetually bullied, always in Canada's shadow. So a lot of it is just his vengeance. It's overkill. He's destroying an entire city / the world. But
it's like a tantrum.
I like that whole thing about this cosmic battle. But at the center of it are these brothers. The older brother and the little brother, the one that was perpetually picked on, and the one who was the bullier. And Tetsuo's kind of like the product of all that, right? It's kind of sad in a way. It's kind of prophetic in a way, because it has real, unfortunate, like school shooter vibes to it, right? It's like, this is what happens when somebody feels like illegitimate and just constantly bullied and constantly tortured and all that kind of thing. But there was always a little bit about it that felt scary to me. It's like, wow, man, Why can't Canada just be a little nicer to this guy? And I like Canada too, and he's iconic with his capsule jacket and everything. So I don't want to call Canada a bad guy, but he's just as much of a villain, really, if you look at it, as Tetsuo is. He's just not as powerful, right? He's just not as strong. He can't harness these telekinetic abilities and all that. So yeah, that's if I had to boil it down to one animated one, it had to be Tetsuo, because I just think it's an awesome character from an awesome film. And probably, late 80s, early 90s, that's still my anime era for, like everything that I'm still the most fond of.
The art direction in that movie is still, to this day, in my opinion, God tier. You watch that now and it's like, yeah, I still don't think there's anything out that compares to that.
I hear you. It's like, how? It's just, and even all the making of documentaries, now there's a new one out. It's still you're left with how. Yeah. How did they pull this off? At the time they pulled it off, all analog, And
you watch it in HD, and the amount of detail is jaw-dropping.
It's insanity. It really is. It really set the bar for forever. It's like, still, even with the digital tools at our disposal now, it's like, is that ever going to be? I don't know. There's nobody.
I mean, you could maybe do it, but nobody would do it now.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It's the thing. It's a collective of all these companies, right? Toshiba and Panasonic and all these people pooling their money and just saying, at a time when that really wasn't a thing, like nerd culture wasn't even big in the West then.
No, that's Akira is what put anime on the map in the West. No question.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Yeah. It wasn't my first anime, but it was the first, it was the beginning it was the dawning of a new era for anime in the East and the West, but especially in the West. And I love that you guys brought Attack on Titan in, because I won't ruin it, but I thought about having Reiner on my list. He's one of the most frustrating villains. It's like, when is this guy? Just, there's some goodness in there, right? Like, is it going to come out? But it never. Well,
maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe.
All right, Dig, are you satisfied?
Yeah. Thanks for playing. That one.
Sorry about that out there. If we're a little long in the tooth on that, I personally like talking about that topic. I could talk about the topic for twice as long as we did. So hard to wrap that in. Fun. That's almost like its own show almost next time to do.
I got to be careful with those Mount Rushmore topics.
I think the way to do a Mount Rushmore next time, if you have 4 guesses, each person picks one, I think, and then you combine them into a Mount Rushmore.
That's a great idea.
That's we could use this level of production, on our shows. All right.
Nah.
Finn, let's go to you. Now, you said you have your original topic from the thread, but you're not beholden to it. So if you want to change your mind, we do that all the time. And so you're welcome to bring up whatever you'd like.
No, I'm going to go with my topic is reality TV. And the question I would pose to everyone is, number one, do you like reality TV? And the thing I'm interested in more so than that is sort of, what are the implications of reality TV insofar as our relationship with media and celebrities? And I'll throw out my take on it. And number one, I just legitimately love reality TV. My wife and I watch it every day, pretty much. Currently obsessed with Southern Charm, if anyone knows that show. And I just think it's really fun, sort of, easy content to watch, with your wife. But beyond that, I actually do think there's an interesting conversation to be had. I don't know if you guys remember when The Real World came out, which is effectively the first reality TV show as we know it, where a bunch of strangers go live in a house together and they record it, which at the time was a totally groundbreaking thing. And I think back then it actually was real. This is before, they scripted things and set up situations and whatnot. It was like essentially the unfiltered experience. And I think I was 13 or 14 when that came out. And to me, after that, TV has never been the same, because everybody sort of realized, like, compared to that, everything felt kind of, I guess, phony compared to that, because it actually was real. And then after that, there was kind of this era, and there were lots of copycats and stuff. And then there was Road Rules and the Real World Road Rules Challenge and Survivor, which sort of kicked off the, reality competition kind of format. And then probably to me, the peak of reality TV is maybe in the mid 2000s, the Viacom era, with all the stuff like The Simple Life and The Hills and I would include the game shows like Next and Date My Mom and Tail Daters and all that stuff in there. And then of course all that created Paris Hilton and by extension Kim Kardashian, who has become basically the most influential person in the most influential family in the world. And the thing that I find really interesting about reality TV in particular, number one, is that I think everyone sort of thought I could do that. And so now with social media, people sort of want to have their own reality TV show. And I think it has sort of inspired people to express themselves, which is cool. But it's also inspired people to be kind of self-absorbed narcissists that think they're, the star of the show. And then number two, I think it also has really changed our relationship with celebrities, where back in the 80s and even the early 90s, celebrities were people that we revered and they could do no wrong and we kind of looked up to them. And now celebrities are basically a punching bag where it's like you put your life out there and act like a clown for our entertainment so we can talk shit about you. And that's sort of the fun of it, is like watch you embarrass yourself and then, we throw rocks at you when you fuck up. So those are my thoughts on reality TV. I know that's a lot, but that's my thoughts. Be interested to hear what you guys think.
No, very well said, Dake. Let's kick it over to you. There's so much to say. I mean, I have a few notes here, I'll let you begin.
There is. And I just got this random thought that this wasn't going to be part of my thing at all, but I just thought like maybe the advent of social media, like how does this play in? How does thinking back to, I graduated from high school in 92, went to college in 93. So first real world, like the advent of reality TV as we knew it, especially in Gen X and the millennials and stuff. But how does that play into modern, I think of with like a tie-in with social media. Social media is still, like you could argue, very curated, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look at my meal, look at my vacation, look at my kid's trophy. It's always like your best look. Look at my new outfit. It's never my kid's misbehaving or, I got in a drunk driving accident. It's never like, so maybe that makes us crave reality TV that much more, because that's where you could get a warts and all look at somebody's, still it's edited.
But there are people who sort of make social media personalities who make their brand basically a professional train wreck. For example, there's a rapper named Blueface who is that, and he knows exactly what he's doing. But that's sort of his thing. He's always getting like in literal street fights with his baby mama and stuff like that. And because he knows that that's what gets attention.
It's cashing in on that whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's like, I'm willing to debase myself and embarrass myself and look like, a train wreck in public because I make money from it. Yeah. I wouldn't choose it, but it works.
And people love it because people say, well, my life sucks, but it's not as bad as that guy's.
Right.
That guy's, I'm crazy, but that guy's crazier. That type of thing makes you feel better about yourself and that whole thing. I mean, I remember the first thing I thought of, Colin would be able to relate to this, was my mom. I don't think I've walked into my mom's house in the last 2 decades when I'm visiting. There's not a reality show on the television. It's Dr. Pimple Popper. It's Ice Road Truckers. It's that weird farmyard veterinarian show that she's obsessed with cows coming out and seeing the whole birth of a goat. Like, it's just like, why? And I don't go in for it. I wouldn't sit down and purposely watch it, but I have to say, I sit down for hours. I'm compelled. I'm slack-jawed. I'm watching the whole thing. It's not like I'm immune to it. And I was thinking of the stuff there. See, I was kind of saved from it in a way, right? Because Real World came out maybe the first couple of seasons, and then I went to college. So it was like 4 years of typical no cable, couldn't really watch reality shows. It was, if I was watching anything, it was rental VHS at that point, right? So I was out of reality TV for a while. Then when I got back from college and I moved to LA, or I moved up to Connecticut or wherever I was, then it was the era of the stuff I was actually tuning into with my then girlfriend, now wife, which was, you had mentioned in your email, I think, Finn, the Rock of Love with Bret Michaels.
Oh, yeah.
Flavor of Love with Flava Flav was the same era. I love the Osbourne. The Osbournes, there was something about, I loved Sabbath, so there was something about this neutered, burnt out rock god that was so sad, but also
a train wreck version of Ozzy.
Hilarious.
But that's exactly the dynamic of, like, he used to be this rock god and now he's a laughingstock.
So funny. And you know what they did? And smartly, they cashed in on it. You know what I mean?
Sharon Osbourne is no dummy.
No dummy, dude. No dummy.
Dude, her beef with ICP or whatever from that
Oh,
that is
yeah.
some of the funniest shit ever.
Dude, she had beef with Iron Maiden too. There's like big Iron Maiden Sharon Osbourne drama from
I think you were telling
Ozfest.
me about this.
And Crazy Town, that's some deep Raprock lore, which we'll get into later.
Oh,
The
yeah,
Sharon
we'll get to
Osbourne
that.
Crazy Town beef.
Interesting.
The only other thing I wanted to say before I pass it off to whoever's next in the squad here is that I remember Jersey Shore when it came out.
Oh yeah, man, that's a
Now,
great
I'm
one.
married into a Philly family, so Jersey Shore all the way, right? But that's when I realized there were two Jersey Shores, and the people around here made sure you knew that. So it was Jersey Shore south of Atlantic City, which is not Jersey Shore, the TV show. And then there was Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, and all points north up to Northern Jersey and New York. And the people out here in Philly, the hoity-toity set that was like Ocean City and South, were very clear that they were besmirching the name of Jersey Shore.
Mm-hmm.
And this was, what was her name? Pookie or whatever the hell her name was?
Snooki.
Yeah.
Pookie.
Close
I was
enough.
close.
Yeah.
I was close.
Well,
They were not the Philly Jersey Shore set. They were the
Right.
Jersey, so I remember that distinction because I was new to that. I'm from New York. We didn't know anything about the Jersey Shore until I married a Philly girl. So,
But I feel like there's a lot of Long Island energy in that Jersey Shore kind of crowd.
Oh, definitely, dude.
dude, 100%.
I know all those.
I'm
kinds
mad
of
at you
people.
for saying that, but also 100%.
Yeah, totally. We have people, some of the casts in our own family, really. Like some of these types of people. So definitely.
Do you remember by any chance the MTV show True Life and the episode of the guy that it was the sort of the pre-Jersey Shore? He was like, True Life, I have a Jersey summer house or something like that. And I think he was from Staten Island, and he like did construction, and he wore one of those like little cabbie hats. And it was kind of like, he sort of looked like Tony Soprano. And he was like, where's my fucking cheese balls?
Yeah. Well, our sister Allie, for a long time, we loved him, actually dated this guy that was just like that, wore one of those caps, huge built dude, just mega Long Island Italian.
Yeah.
And I dig it personally. I think it's hysterical.
You know what? We had Growing Up Gotti. I forgot.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which was in the shadow of where my parents grew up. Old Westbury was like my parents grew up in a very blue collar neighborhood, but Old Westbury, where the Gottis were, was like two towns away. So that was I forgot about. That was one show I was always tuned into. Because it was just interesting to see Long Island. They were going back and forth.
And then the Long Island medium, of course.
I was like, oh, that's that's Northern State Parkway, like that type of thing. It was home. It was cool to see home on TV.
So that's one of the things I legitimately like about reality TV is like, I'm a student of human behavior since, my career is in marketing, which at the end of the day is understanding what people do, why they do it, and how to, build a product for them and sell it to them in the context of that. And reality TV is such an interesting way to do that. And obviously it's like very, distorted and exaggerated, but, I grew up in the Seattle area. We don't have Guidos there. Like, I didn't even know that existed until I saw it, on some reality show. Like, what the fuck is this?
Right. Oh no, it's real. And it's glorious.
Oh, it's very real.
I ended up living in New Jersey for a year. I lived in Montclair.
Oh.
And
it's a nice
we
area.
went on vacation to Wildwood, I think, or Cape May. I don't remember which.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of a taste of it. And it's just, it's a whole other world, like it might as well be a different country or even like a different planet. Like just the whole like New York, New Jersey, Philly kind of area is the exact opposite of Washington. It's like of the Seattle area. It's ugly. Everyone there is super aggressive, and I couldn't handle it. I had to tap out.
Yeah, it's definitely got its own spirit, which I dig personally. And I think I kind of wear on my sleeve in some way, but maybe not entirely anymore.
I respect it, but it's not for me.
Yeah, understood completely. Dustin, where do you stand on the topic of reality television?
So I've mentioned this before that starting, I think in 2002, my family no longer had cable TV. So the only bits of TV I would really see is either at family member's house or if I was spending the night at a friend's house, something like that. But even as I got older, I found that reality TV, like the most mainstream stuff, never really appealed to me, in that I don't know, you find out like, oh, well, there's writers on this and it's fake. And I think for me as a teenager, there was like part of my brain can compute, like, just enjoy it for what it is, even if it's fake. I remember watching the big reality show when I was a teenager was Viva La Bam.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so big. I mean, so many kids wearing Bam shirts. I mean, obviously he was huge. He was in the Tony Hawk games. He had the show. He was, of course, professional skateboarder, stuff like that, CKY. But, and Jackass, of course. But when I watched Viva La Bam, I'm like, dude, I don't know why. Like, why is this dude torturing his parents' entertainment? I just feel bad. I don't know. I don't know if it has to do with, like, if it's some fantasy for most teenagers. It's like, man, I wish I could torture and trash my parents' house like Bam does. Like, that would be awesome. Because I was just like, I don't know. It was not appealing to me, really, at all. And it's funny. I mean, look at Bam. Not this is related, but dude, if you guys have seen Bam now,
oh, dude,
it's sad. He's
not a good place.
Really can't get it together.
Dustin, I tell you, he showed up at our local Costco out here. It's like a town away.
Oh shit! Well, he is near you guys, right?
Yeah.
Sort
well,
of.
no,
he's like middle of the state.
He's in the neighboring county, or his parents are.
Okay.
I don't know what he was doing in Bucks County because it's like an hour away where he grew up.
Right.
But he was in our local Costco for some reason, just hobnobbing with whoever wanted to, like, take a selfie with him and sign things. It was just, he just showed up.
Like an appearance.
Yeah. And then the next day he was in LA again. It was like, what?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
I thought you would appreciate that.
So I was thinking, because I was like, well, there are quote unquote reality shows that I'm into, but they're not this traditional, like, Jersey Shore type reality show. They're more focused. I don't know, Finn, you'll have to call an audible if you don't think these count, but there are certain shows that I'm like, this is trash TV, and that's what I need right now. I need to watch garbage that has no fulfilling aspect. It just is fun to watch. It feels good. And so the main one in that category is Hoarders. And I know, Colin, you're big on Hoarders as well.
Yeah.
Watch it. I can't. It's too dark.
You can't? Dude, I was going to say, the best episode, you got to watch the episode with the poop lady. The poop lady episode is 100%.
Which one?
The absolute best. Do you know what I'm talking about, Colin?
I don't know. I'm like, I don't know which one. There's so many, in my opinion, episodes
that involve poop.
Definitely. You know, you
yeah,
gotta be
there's
way
this
more
amazing
specific
part.
than the poop lady. Yeah. Yeah,
there's the part with the poop lady where this guy's like, your house is like practically covered in feces. And she's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, don't you smell it? She's like, no, I never really connected that would be that smell. Like, she has no idea.
Dude, well, I mean, that's the thing, is that they're just, a lot of these people are just crazy. It's interesting to me on that show how many of those houses end up just being condemned because they're just so fucked.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And dude, it's one of those things when you watch it, I think that, you know, some people watch it to feel good about themselves. Like, oh man, at least I'm not in this situation, or I don't know. Sometimes I think about, man, I'm taking pleasure in these literally mentally ill people. Yeah. This is entertaining to us. There's this one where they're cleaning up, and this old guy, they're like, these Mountain Dew bottles expired 10 years ago, and we're getting rid of anything that you said you want to get rid of, anything that doesn't have sentimental value. And he like holds them in his hand and goes, these have sentimental value. And they're like, just these bottles.
I would bet that if you, and maybe they do this on the show, I don't know, I've only watched it like once or twice, but I would bet that if you got to know those people and found out how they grew up, I bet almost all of them have endured some sort of really horrific trauma that makes them this way.
Yeah, and I'm just like chowing down with some chips on the couch and trying to unwind.
Well, I understand.
Mom, is there more salsa?
Yeah,
they understand though, because I understand what you're saying. I wrote about this in that the more serious the subject matter is, actually, the more compelling reality TV is to me, because it's less likely that it's scripted in any way. So the two examples I think of are Intervention and Hoarders.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Intervention's a really compelling show. I watch it on and off. I used to watch it in college, like constantly, and I find it really fascinating. And that's straight up real. And Hoarders,
you can learn a lot from it about addiction.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
You know, how to deal with addicts. There's a lot you can learn from it.
Totally. And it's frustrating sometimes. And it is, I don't want to say it's good for people to watch it, but it kind of is, where it's like, this is what happens to you and what you do to the people around you that you love.
Yes.
So understand that and ingest that now. And I've never gotten that far, but I've said before that around the time in my like turning 30s, I was drinking way more than I probably should. Just loved bourbon. I wasn't really like getting too crazy with it, but in my mind, I'm like, nah, you got to walk away. And hopefully people have kind of put that stuff into their life as little barriers to say like, oh, well, be careful about it. So I don't really worry about it as far as that's concerned. Hoarders is a little more predatory to me because this isn't something that a lot of people really do have to deal with. And, but I've watched the shit out of that show too. And that's also real because the thing I noted, and you'll probably be sympathetic to this, all of you, because you're all in production in your own ways, is the more I understood about production, the more frustrating I found reality TV generally. Because I'll give you guys an example. So Pawn Stars, right? These guys come in and they sell these things, and it makes it seem like these guys are just walking in, and you really know in your head that this isn't happening, right? But it makes it seem like they're just walking in off the street and they have something to sell. And you realize it, but you realize it's like, okay, and you don't think too much about it. You're like, it's probably not true, but who cares? But then you're like, okay, so they have the shot of the guy coming in the store. They have the shot of the guy coming out of the store. They have the shot up here. They're having this guy literally do these things multiple times, probably. They're even, and they're just, it's so obviously a show. So now it's not authentic. And that's what I loved about what YouTube has done for reality TV in some way, where I've watched a few of these guys over time where they run like a pawn store or whatever. And they're like, okay, they have people come in and it's just a fixed angle of the real authentic experience. And I'm like, yeah. So the ideas are there, but they just, over time, I think like it became too cute by half in some way. Because I remember the early shows that were fun, that were even heavily written and kind of stylized. Like I loved The Mole with Anderson Cooper. You guys remember that, when that show was I think that was a CBS show?
No.
It was about like a group of people. It's probably from 99, maybe. It was about a group of people where one of them is like working for the TV company and kind of like trying to fuck everything up. And everyone has to try to figure out who it is, basically. And there was like cool ideas and cool things kind of happening. And Survivor itself I wasn't really into it, but that's a novel idea for television.
Yeah.
And obviously Real World and Road Rules. I was reading about this recently, I think because Dagan and I did MTV and on Knockback, and I started reading about Real World, and then I started reading about these kind of proto-reality television shows from like the 60s and 70s. And I can't remember one of the names of it, where there's one where it's about a family, like, and it's in their house and like they're just filming them and kind of going about their business. And I was like, it's so interesting. People had this notion, they were just a little too early. It's like on live with streaming games. Like you're just a little too early to the game. But
or Candid Camera, right? That was a thing.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. That's another great example.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to say is that the Kardashians is an example. I respect the shit out of them. I always have. And the idea that people just hate on them or whatever, I'm like, that's fine. I don't care what you feel about the Kardashians. It doesn't matter. But it's like, damn, have they just expertly manipulated the situation to a degree that I can't even believe it. And
like when people say they have no skills, I'm like, really? Capturing the attention of hundreds of millions of people for 15 years? That's not a skill?
That's exactly right. You're a marketer, so you know it. It's an incredible ability to stay relevant for no reason, like a self-fulfilling reason, basically.
Yeah,
which is absolute brilliance. And I don't hate I don't hate their hustle at all. I think it's actually pretty awesome. And then the other thing I wanted to say was that if people go back and look, when I was a freelancer at IGN in those years, like 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, I used to write for IGN TV sometimes, and actually pretty often. And I reviewed, in quotes, so many reality TV shows. Like Hogan Knows Best, I think was one of them.
Oh, that's a great one. Like, yeah.
And My Fair Brady. And
I forgot
you can find all of those. And I used to review Girls Next Door, and I wish I still had this email, but I don't, where Kendra, the younger blonde one, emailed me, and we had a brief dialogue where she was like really mad about how much shit I talked about her, and it was her.
I forgot about
you remember that
this.
thing? I told you.
I do.
And then someone else got in touch with me and was like, told me all of this dirt about her that was like in her family. And I was like 20 and like in college. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this. And it was at my neu.edu email address. And so it's just gone to history. It's just gone to history. But that did happen. I'm so glad you remember that, because like someone remembers that happened. That like my first ever beef with someone of any kind was actually with Kendra. But no one really, there was no like, if there was social media or something at that time, it was just before that, you know, that would have been interesting. So I thought that was a funny thing. And then finally, I just wanted to underline YouTube reality. Dude, I watched this show. It's called something. It's like something in the plains. I just started watching it. It's this guy in North Dakota who goes to like town halls, looks at old maps, and then finds old pits of garbage and where like outhouses were, and then just gets permission to dig there, and then just digs shit, literally sometimes shit, but shit up. And it's just all sorts of old stuff from like the prairie days and from the I don't know, from the frontier days. And I was just like, this is good shit. Like there's all these little micro, the Hornet King is another one.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like these are all reality shows.
And
that really comes from, you would imagine, you know, Hannah, of course, but also you have like Animal Planet and all of these things that really kind of got it going. But it's like, no, you can actually just do this on your own. You can have your own company and do this professionally and then just film it. And that's just another piece of revenue.
And probably make more money than the people on those old Viacom shows did, because they didn't make shit for the most part.
Yeah, do you know do you know what the deals were for those people? Probably, yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, I've seen one deal for the music licenses on The Real World. This was in 2001, so well after like its prime, but it was still around. And the license was $1. They paid you $1 for the privilege of having your song on The Real World, because, you know, at that time, you know, the exposure from that show was still valuable. Yeah.
And it's true. I remember you are probably the only person I know who might even know what I'm about to say or know what I'm talking about, which is The Real World, where they represented From Zero, the band From Zero. Do you know what I'm talking about? There was like what their fake job was, or not their fake job, but their job or whatever in quotes was to work on marketing at some record label.
What season was this?
I'll have to look this up. This was probably in 2000, like around 2000.
Huh. Okay.
And there's a band, like a new metal band called From Zero.
Oh, that's fun.
And they put out 2 records, and they like were in charge of bringing them to market or whatever in some way. And that's how I discovered that band. And then I went out and bought the record, and I actually ended up loving it. And that was all because of Real World. So it ended up, and no one knows that band anymore. But yeah, they're called, if anyone looks it up, it's called From Zero is the band.
I vaguely remember their name. Road to Ozfest was another one. There's still people that remember, you know, what was it called? Like A Dozen Furies or something. It was like the band that won that one, I think. People still bring that up to me sometimes. Making the Band was another good one with P. Diddy or whatever he called himself back then.
That's right.
Where he made them walk to Brooklyn.
Yeah.
When he made them walk to Brooklyn to get a bagel for him or whatever it was.
That's some flex of shit.
Yeah, and then Danity Kane came out of that, who ended up having some actual big songs.
Yeah, and
oh right, yeah,
and I think Chappelle memorialized that whole thing with his skits.
Oh, do you guys remember White Rapper? MC Search? There was a brief, maybe it was like 3 seasons on.
I remember
MTV
him. I didn't know he had a show.
The White Rapper show, and Search and somebody else hosted. You know, they emceed, and then, you know, I guess amateur rappers would come on for a record contract type thing. That was another good. You know what, Finn? I just have to say, I love you invoking the name of Viacom, because this whole thing for me feels so Viacom. When I went back to Nickelodeon to work in 2019, 2020, maybe it was. And one of their huge things was we're not called that anymore. Like they were making a real effort to like part with, I think, what was that image of them. So you can't even refer to it as it's Paramount. So Viacom was a very distinctive era. You know, that was reality TV. Yeah. That was our VH1 era. We're trying to, you know, be the big boy movie studio thing now. So that was talk about marketing. That was a very decisive thing. Like, and we were just animating. I mean, I was at Nick Jr. We didn't have anything to do with it. They were, even with us, they'd be like, it's not Viacom, it's Paramount. We're changing everything. Right. It's a complete from the ground up rebranding. But I love the Viacom era. That's nostalgia.
You might know the answer to this. It is almost, well, not almost, it is impossible to watch the vast majority of the like mid 2000s Viacom stuff anywhere. It's not on any streaming service.
Yeah.
I assume that has to do with some sort of licensing or something like that. Do you know?
They're very sensitive with licensing. So if anything's caught in like a licensing, limbo,
like songs
they would
or
rather just
something
not
like that.
even roll the dice on it. They're very conservative, but I think a lot of it has to do with, from a marketing perspective, just parting with that image. You know what I mean? Like they think of themselves as the various entities, like, you know, animation, live action, but they're very like, we're Top Gun Maverick now. Like we're big, you know, we're they think of themselves more as a feature player, I think, than television. Because like you can't watch
cable's dying.
You can't watch the golden era of Cribs anywhere. Like even if you get Paramount Plus, Cribs is on there, but not the ones that you want to watch. And I wonder if it was just something stupid, like the producer, you know, that the term on the model releases was 10 years or something like that. And they're up now and they're like, well, we're not going to go back to fucking Chad Ochocinco and ask him to sign a new release just to put this on Paramount Plus. So fuck it.
That's a great point.
Some
I know
dumb
that
shit
happened with
like
Jackass.
that would be my guess.
I know that happened with Bam and some of his people, where it was like, yeah, it was a thing that was set to expire. There was no deal in perpetuity. So it was like, after a dozen years, we got to go back to the table. If you don't want to, then those episodes is going to disappear, you know, or those seasons, whatever it is. So you make a good point there.
They didn't know any better.
Frustrating.
And then it's so funny. Like we've remarked on that before, that there are so many interesting, it's the same in games where there are so many interesting deals where you just didn't understand where things were going at all. And so you didn't.
And you'd be like, who would want to play this game in 20 years?
Right.
Who gives a shit, you know?
Right. That's exactly right. That's why there are famously NES games and SNES games where it's like, no one really even knows who owns this game. Like, or like, like who actually owns this? Who is, it's like some shell company of a company that was like existed 20 years ago. And it's like, I don't know, man. And that's why a lot
the
of things
guy from GOG, Good Old Games, he was talking about this. And there was one RPG, I forget what it was, that they wanted to release that was literally owned by Shell, like the oil company, because they bought some company that owned the rights to a bunch of games and other shit. And, you know, they've approached Shell trying to like re-release this game, and Shell's like, we don't give a fuck about this computer game that we own from, you know, 1995. Get out of here.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I know that Quaker Oats was another company that owned a lot of random shit like that. Because they just decided to make games or invest in them randomly in the 80s.
You know what that was, Kyle? Somebody's grandson was like a fan of television and games, and we're like, Grandpa, you should get, you know, he was like an executive, sat on the board of Quaker Oats, and they're like, you should get involved in this. And they're like, oh, really? Let's look at, it's like for his grandkids.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
And then that's how like the whole company got divested into entertainment.
I love that.
And that's how we got Custer's Revenge.
I know, Jesus Christ. Yeah, little Domino, you know, as Billy gets an Atari 2600 Big Domino is the release of Custer's Revenge. So the other thing I wanted to say in parting, and we'll throw it back to Finn, see if he's satiated, is I love the blooper style, or not blooper. It's not really intended to be bloopers, but kind of the overboard or accidental reality TV stuff. So what I mean by that is that Daddy-O-5 situation, for instance, on YouTube, where the guy was like mega abusive to his family in the videos that they were making, and it all fell apart. It just became a huge catastrophe. And I remember another one where there was this, I don't remember the girl, what the woman's name was, but she was a YouTuber and she was with her dog. And I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, where she put up the entire raw feed of their video on accident instead of the edit. And so she's like mega mean to the dog in the edit. It's like her trying to get the dog to like be in a position and be like, stay in the fucking spot and all this kind of stuff. And then she accidentally uploads that. Have any of you guys seen this? It's like really crazy. And
how does this not happen?
She was a
time,
huge YouTuber, probably like 1 million subscriber YouTuber who like got cratered because of this video got uploaded.
I mean, would you say that Chris Chan is sort of a version of this?
He's like the shadow version. Yeah. And again, he's in this county that I live in. He's somewhere around here. Like whenever I wander about, I might run into Chris Chan at some point. Never really
Can't rule it out.
Never really know. Are you, so where are you on this? Are you satisfied with the conversation, Finn?
I'm satisfied. We can close this chapter and move on.
All right. Excellent. Okay. Our third topic, since I have Finn here and he's captive, can't go anywhere. Finn, I need to talk to you about something that's so near and dear to my heart. And I wore
I'm listening. I'm here. Whatever you need from me,
I wore my sweat. I appreciate that. I wore my 311 sweatshirt in commemoration of it, my transistor sweatshirt. And it's Raprock. And I feel like, and you're the perfect person to talk to about this because as everyone knows, my best friend Ramon, he's a musician and he loves music too. And we have a real breaking of feeling on this. We both grew up as fans of nu metal and fans of rap rock, and we're going to talk about that another time. But this one thing is that I've always kind of stuck with this genre, specifically this subgenre of nu metal, of rapping over rock music. And I feel like it gets no respect, but I'm confused by that. It's almost talked about like it's disco or something, just totally. It's like, oh, that's irrelevant, and we don't really like that anymore. We don't really do that. But then, as I noted in my email, it's like, okay, but I'm watching videos of Rage Against the Machine playing before 25,000 people in every city in the United States. I'm watching Limp Bizkit with Nu Metal Cowboy in huge letters behind them, opening with break stuff before 100,000 people at a festival, and they're going nuts.
A festival from last year.
It's crazy. I don't really understand this. And I was curious where you stood on this. If it's something it's obviously not a legitimate genre to lots of music people anymore. And a lot of bands don't really respect the genre. I remember there was some not beef, but it was just I thought it was kind of classless actually, where one of the remaining Beastie Boys was asked about how they felt that 311 always said that they were like a huge inspiration. And they were like, oh, we don't want anything to do with
those
them.
Guys. Yeah.
You know, like, and I was like, that's kind of fucked up. I mean,
wow.
Especially because you played Raprock. I mean, one of your legendary performances, in my opinion, that's still, that people watch is Letterman Sabotage performance, where they're just a complete Raprock outfit. So,
or Fight for Your Right to Party.
Right. Exactly. Like those are their roots. They played their own instruments and stuff. And well, you know all this. I don't need to educate you on any of this stuff. So I really wanted to know how you felt about this, and then ask the boys as well what their thoughts on the genre are, because it's a genre that's near and dear to me. I as a drummer, I think it's a wonderful genre. You make amazing pockets. Think about, I was listening earlier to Give It Away on, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, the Chili Peppers. Like,
incredible drumming, ridiculous drumming on that album.
Yeah. It's and again, Chili Peppers, all these other bands where everyone's like, oh, I don't like that genre, but I love the Chili Peppers. Oh, I don't like that genre, but I love, Rage. Oh, I go see Rage Against the Machine. I'm like, what are you saying? I don't understand this. And then Linkin Park, of course, maybe one of the biggest bands of the late traditional industry era. Yeah. And one of the great losses in recent music history was the death of Chester Bennington. I'm like, that's a fucking rap rock band. I don't understand the disconnect here. So am I off base? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I have good news for you, which is everything you said, I would say, was accurate up until a couple years ago. And now the tables have turned, and rap rock and nu metal are most definitely cool again. Limp Bizkit is universally loved by absolutely everybody. Linkin Park hailed by pretty much everybody as one of the best bands of all time. 311, I'd say people have not come around on them yet, but I'm still holding out hope. Still justice for 311. No justice, no peace.
Just those first 5 records. I don't care about anything else really that deeply.
Which is the one that has Creatures on it?
That's that would be Evolver, which is their 7th record.
I think that's the last one I would listen to.
Yeah, that's that a lot of people feel that way too. It's like, to me, I just want justice for music, Grassroots, Blue Album, Transistor, and Sound System.
I'm on board with that. Yeah, Transistor is my favorite, but they're all great. Too. All those first 5 are all great.
Isn't it good for you guys that they don't arrive though? Like 311, you don't really want to lose the 311 mystique.
There is something interesting about them, isn't there? I'm actually going out with our brother-in-law tonight for dinner, and he brought this up recently, not too recently, but that like 311 is almost like Fish, where they just kind of they exist. It's the original lineup. Yep. It's very, they just tour constantly, but yeah, there is no justice for
Pearl Jam is like that too. They're sort of not really relevant anymore outside of their fan base, but they have this like super loyal, dedicated, not rap rock, obviously, but similar kind of path to that. So,
and they pioneered, I'm sorry for interrupt you. They pioneered like direct to their consumer kind of stuff too, right? Pearl Jam, which is kind of cool. So that probably allowed them to continue to be relevant to their people.
Yeah. Cool. And to give them some credit, they probably gave up a lot of money by doing that, because they were butting heads with Ticketmaster in like 1994, way before anybody else was. And it definitely hurt their career. So you got to give them some credit for that. But yeah, rap rock, I would say, is cool again. My opinion on it is that it's a genre where there's a whole lot of just complete trash. The stuff that's the cream of the crop, I think, is legitimately great. But the fall off after that is very, very steep, in my opinion. But you know, when you're talking about the greats, like, I mean, to me, Rage Against the Machine, especially the first album, is like still absolutely god tier. That's untouchable. That's like an all-time classic to me. My personal favorite band in the genre, which I know you're familiar with, Colin, is Downset.
Yes.
Reason being, so they started out as a straight edge hardcore band called Social Justice in like the late 80s. And then they heard the Rage Against the Machine demo and they were like, holy shit, we got to do that. And then they turned into sort of, you know, a rap rock band that had like a rivalry with Rage Against the Machine. I grew up being very into graffiti, and all the Downset guys are all like very legit, like LA graffiti guys. And so I thought that was really cool that they were like, you know, sort of the combination of like hardcore, rap, and graffiti. So those were like three things that I was super into when I was a teenager. So that band is particularly near and dear to my heart. Personally, I would say after that 311, especially because I'm a gigantic fan of Chad Sexton.
Oh, me too. Me too. That's the drummer in 311. And yeah, he's completely underrated, like almost criminally so. I was just talking about him recently. What I don't even know what context it was, where I was saying he's one of the drummers. I've been playing drums for, at this point, most of my life. And he is one of those drummers where I don't bother almost ever playing 311 songs. They're so technical. Yeah, they're so hard. They're incredibly hard. There's always something weird about the songs. Incredible fucking buzz fills and like 128th notes and shit. It's like, I don't. And it's because he's like a trained marching drum corps snare drummer. Yeah. And he's excellent. And he's also the major songwriter in the band, which is,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Like if you look at the liner notes, it's either Hexum or Sexton for almost all of their songs is the songwriter. So he also plays these other instruments as well, which is, so I've always loved him. He's, as far as the drummers that I love to play. Oh, it was the Q&A that I was doing it, and that's where it came in. So no one would have heard that except for our $10 and up subs, but,
which I'm one of, by the way, specifically for the Q&A episodes.
Oh, okay.
Nice. Yeah. Best value in the LSM extended universe, in my opinion.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was saying the drummers that I like, that I play with, I love, that I can actually play along with, are like Adrian Young of No Doubt, or even stuff, you know, Rage, and you know, I love playing that first Rage record.
Chad Sexton's so deceptively straightforward because, you know, sort of the core grooves that he plays are, you know, usually seem like they're pretty simple. But if you actually try to play the whole song note for note, like you said, there's always some weird, tricky shit in there that you got to be pretty good to pull that stuff off. Yeah,
he's mega technical, and that's not the way we can all play. If you play drums well enough, you can play ghost notes and all those kinds of things. But just the constant, metronomic, real approach to and the huge setup of toms. He was starting to play more of a jazz kit for a while, like during Evolver and Don't Tread on Me, and then he just expanded right back to this transistor era. I don't even know what you're supposed to do with any of these drums and cymbals set up. He's really special. I love him too. And that's one of the things I was going to say, was just rhythmically, because I'm a drummer and I guess my secondary instrument would be bass, is that I just find the pockets in some of these songs. I think of Come Original, actually, 311's Come Original, as a really great example of this, where there's the Nick Hexum kind of singing part, and then it goes into Essay's rapping part. And just as the music drops off, and it's just the bass and the drums, and it's just I'm like, how can you listen to this and not realize that these genres go together so well? But you're right too, that when it gets bad, it's bad. And
that's how we get Kid Rock.
Right, exactly. I never liked Kid Rock. And I'm not saying that as like anything, because I love bands like Creed and other things. So I'm not trying to be like, I'm too
Creed's
cool for that.
Creed's cool now too, by the way.
That's great to know, because I've always loved them too. But Kid Rock, I never loved it. Actually, my high school hockey coach loved Kid Rock, and he would drive me to like practices and stuff. And Pete, he was at our sister's wedding actually, and that's like always my memory of that. But Limp Bizkit, you and I actually had a brief correspondence about this, which was another reason I wanted to bring this up, was that you tweeted out something about Wes Borland, who's Limp Bizkit's guitarist, and he's like a virtuoso level guitarist, and people just don't know that about them, that they're actually...
Everybody in that band, other than Fred Durst, is a fucking insanely good musician.
Yeah, they're incredible. And then, you know, John Otto is another amazing drummer, where you can tell on that one record. I think Josh Freese plays on the Unbelievable Truth, or whatever that record is called, that he doesn't play on, and you can tell it's not him. It's like, it doesn't feel right. That he's awesome too. And and we were saying, so we were corresponding, and you had said something about him, and I emailed you, or I DM'd you, and I was just like, my feeling on Wes Borland is that he was embarrassed of Limp Bizkit, and that he came to realize that he would be irrelevant without them. And that's no one cares about your other shit. No offense.
Yep.
And your virtuosic playing is actually part of what made Limp Bizkit relevant. So embrace it. And I think you and I agree that by 2008, 2009, when he came back, that they totally did. So I'm so happy to hear that. Maybe I'm a little late on my complaints of it being irrelevant, because I'm so glad to see these things happen. I think it's such a special genre, but to get the other guys in here and get their thoughts. Dustin, where are you on this genre? Do you listen to anything? Do you care about it at all? Whether it's the Linkin Parks or the Limp Bizkits? I don't expect people to listen to the deeper stuff like 311 or anything like that, but do you feel like those styles go together?
Taproot,
Taproot, early Taproot, definitely. That new Taproot record's pretty good. They're like more in the post-hardcore, like weird alt rock. I don't know what's going on with them now.
They're more like post-grunge kind of thing.
Yeah,
but
there it is.
Yeah. Well,
Dustin, speak on it.
I don't necessarily consider myself a rap rock fan, but I'm not a hater. And there are many, I wouldn't say many, but a few rap rock bands that I do really like, or did really like growing up. In particular, I mean, it's got to be Linkin Park was huge band for me. Like, I remember being in 6th grade and just alternating between Hybrid Theory and Meteora, just those two albums for 3 months straight.
Classics.
Yeah. And I mean, they were huge. And I remember when Minutes to Midnight came out. That's their 3rd album. Iconically, the big hit single was the song from Transformers, which is now a meme. Now What I've Done.
Yeah.
I remember being so disappointed with that album because they left behind a lot of the Mike Shinoda rap stuff. It showed up a few times in the album, but they really were trying to like create this much more commercial Linkin Park, album at that point. It was really disappointing. And looking back now, man, they're one of the top bands. It's like, man, I did not get to see them. And now it's really not going to be possible, at least to see them in the way they were now that Chester's gone. And I don't know if a lot of people will agree with me, but it felt like when I heard about Chester dying, I was like, man, I wonder if this is what the previous generation felt like when Kurt Cobain died. Like, is Chester my generation's Kurt Cobain in a lot of ways? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe for some of us. At least for me, it was like, damn, that really fucking sucks.
Yeah, I remember I actually saw 311 the day that happened. I was at Dagan's house. And I was seeing them in Philadelphia because my friend Ramon's band Bad Rabbits was opening for 311. And so we were going to check them out. And that was an amazing show. And they played Beyond the Gray Sky from Evolver for him that night or whatever. And so I always remember that, make that connection. It was really sad. It's been a while. And plus I love Stone Temple Pilots. And so he was kind of getting wrapped up with them a little bit too. And yeah, that was fucked. But Dag, I want to get you in here.
Oh, hold on. I'm not done yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
You cut me off. It's okay. The other big one that I want to talk about, mainly just because my dad loves this band. A lot of you guys knew I grew up in a Christian household that was very much into Christian metal and rock and stuff like that. And obviously there's a lot of, stinky bands that are cringy in that category, but some of them rule. And one of them is POD.
Yeah. Yes. And hell yes.
Yeah, my dad was a huge POD fan. I remember listening. What's the album that Southtown?
Southtown, yeah, the Fundamentals of Southtown or whatever.
Fundamentals of Southtown. Okay, so I remember hearing that one a lot. And then they also had a lot more commercial album with Satellite, but that album still rules, even though it was much more commercial. Dude, I remember listening to that album quite a bit with my dad. And I always appreciated there were certain bands like that. That's like, yeah, they're a Christian band, but they're like, we don't have to be cheesy about it, and still achieved a lot of commercial success. I mean, there's a lot of examples of that. Bands like Under Oath, I think, was a big one that kind of broke through and stuff like that. But so yeah, POD was another big one growing up. And then, dude, that first Rage Against the Machine album, I know you guys brought it up earlier, but I remember getting into that album in 7th grade and listening to a lot of those songs and getting into it. And again, Travis Furman, the legend, my dad, I remember telling him about, he's like, oh yeah, we have that album. He pulled it from, like, he had this giant collection of CDs. He pulled it down. He's like, yeah, I remember I saw them at this festival right when this album came out, and there wasn't very many people there to see them. But like kind of doing the hipster thing to me, but not intentionally. Where he's just like, oh yeah, I've been into them for a while. I'm like, you bought the first album before they were signed at this. Well, maybe not before they were signed. I don't know what
I saw
deal
them
was,
on
but-
Lollapalooza, I think, the year that came out in 92 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Probably the same tour he saw them on.
Yeah. Yeah. So my dad was into them for a stint too, but yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at this Wikipedia list. I'll send it to you guys. This list of rap rock bands. Some of them I'm like, I don't know. Finn, do you think that Death Grips is considered a rap rock band?
No.
Because apparently Wikipedia considers it, which is just...
Let me see.
Neither is Lil Peep. That's...
Yeah,
I would not agree with that at all.
Let me go through some of these and see,
crazy.
like, make sure I touch on some of the good ones here for people. So as far as like, they're horrible musicians, but Bloodhound Gang, very fun band, very funny.
Good songwriters.
Band. Yeah, good live band. If you don't care too much about the quality, it's all just bar chords anyway. They're silly and fun.
Where's Primer 55 on this list? That's what I want to know.
Yes. That's so fun. And POD is funny because somehow, and this was during the more early dial-up internet days, was someone in our school was part of POD's street team. And so got a bunch of POD stuff all the time. And you'd find it in like hallways to, cassette singles for the song Southtown and other stuff like that. Who else is on this?
That
and that's when you accepted Christ into your life.
That's right. Chronic Future, they put out that one record. They're on this list. They put out that one record. They were really young, I think. I think they were like 17 or 18 when they released that first record. Corporate Avenger is when rap rock gets really bad. That's
or Methods of Mayhem.
Methods of Mayhem was really bad. They're on here as well. I'm trying to find who else would be on here that would be interesting. Faith No More's early stuff obviously is rap rock, and that's good. Head PE had that weird record. What else is on here? Oh, NERD's early stuff. Papa Roach. Oh, so that's a great example. That first Papa Roach record is classic rap rock. And a band on here that I really used to love I loved their first 2, maybe 3 records is Zebrahead. They were awesome. They're on their 3rd singer now at this point, but they're not even real band to me anymore. It's like so far away from your connection. And Vanilla Ice is on here because he did put out that in 98 or 99. He put out that rap rock record.
That's right.
And there's that song called Living. That's actually pretty good from that record, and I have that on
that record's not terrible because Ross Robinson produced it, who is the godfather of nu metal that did Korn's first album that kicked off the genre. And so for whatever reason they linked up and he did a record with Ross Robinson, and it's not terrible.
And who's not on here is Two Skinny Jays. They're not on here.
Oh, that's
right. A few others, but yeah, Dake. So I want to ask you about this because you're a huge hip hop fan. Now I am too, and I actually became a hip hop. I liked some hip hop when I was a kid. I was very much indoctrinated by you guys, by Tribe and De La, Wu-Tang. But I was kind of not super into it until I got into 311 and some other things, and then I went around and started listening to much more hip hop and became really quite fascinated by it. And Micah and I have talked about this in the past, and I've always wanted, I'm curious about her opinion as a Black woman, where it's like, all right, so see if I can get this. Rock music really begins from Black American music. Right. And it becomes this white thing. And there are obviously major Black players during that time. But then there are these kind of more Black spinoffs of it. And hip hop becomes this major spinoff, this more electronic spinoff. And it would be interesting to me which is a prolifically Black genre of music. And it would be interesting for me for it to have wrapped back around to rock and found its way back to it. And what I've always been fascinated about was that, with rare exception, because even a band like Seven Dust is not a rap rock band, they're a nu metal band. Right. It's like there are not many Black frontmen of any of these bands at all. And what that says to me is that this shit is irrelevant largely in hip hop. And there have been some crossovers, like It's All About the Benjamins and stuff like. And obviously, I wrote in my email the early stuff with Run DMC and Aerosmith and Biohazard and Public Enemy, which did a fucking awesome. I love that song. I listen to that song all the time when I'm working out. And so I'm curious, more hip hop connected, what do you think about that and the idea that it was never able to come full circle? It's almost been like and I don't want to talk about the Black community as a monotype, but it's like as a musical entity, they're kind of like, like the closest you kind of get to it is NERD or maybe the Roots or something like that, which is a much more rap rock band when you see them live. Like I've seen the Roots many times, and their stuff comes off much more rap rockish when you see them live than when you listen to them on their records. So, do you think there's anything there? I'm curious. Like it's just kind of stopped, and it's not embraced.
Yeah, I like you conflating it with disco. It feels a little bit like that. I was thinking a lot about disco because I rewatched Saturday Night Fever the other night, and I was like, you say what you want about disco, but there's something magical about this era. Sometimes there just needs to be a certain amount of time elapsed. I feel like not just in a nostalgic way, but just to let appreciation set in. But I got to tell you guys, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. Here comes the hater. Never liked Raprock. I think now you guys can help me figure it out. We could do the detective yarn on the wall, try to figure this out. I've always had very specific musical taste, and that could be part of it. It could also be a generational thing. I mean, I'm like mid Gen X, like I'm going to be 50 years old next week. You know what I mean? So I skew old maybe for this style of music. I got to level with you. I always thought it was corny. Now there are anomalies, right? Like I think of, just to get this out of the way, I think of Linkin Park's Numb or Encore that they did with Jay-Z. Fucking amazing.
Dude,
like,
that Jay-Z album rules.
That
got me into actual rap music.
I could see that being the gateway.
That was
I
my
could see
gateway.
that being
That was probably for a lot of
point.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, like because it's just out and out a good song. The other thing I should say here, not to be an apologist, but like I don't have a musical bone in my body, so I bring no musicianship into this argument at all. But I will say, if I have to trace my roots musically, I was really, really thoroughly into hip hop by like 87, 88, which is young for a young,
I started getting into it around then too. I'm a few years younger than you, but sadly not by much.
Wow, you were super young. So like a young white kid from the suburbs, that's early. I mean, it wasn't uncommon for where I grew up, but I already had my roots firmly hooked into rap music and hip hop at that time. So it was from the inception, like Big Daddy Kane, Kool Mo D, LL Cool J, Tribe and De La, of course, Divine Styler, 3 Times Dope, like all the like really early hip hop. And that was, I think of growing up with music, right? It was whatever my mom was playing in the car, which she was really, usually bumping top 40. Or my parents played at home on their stereo, the Beatles, Sabbath, Zeppelin, Fleetwood Mac, Genesis, Supertramp, whatever. So I grew up with a certain amount of music. Top 40 stuff was okay. Like I remember really digging Duran Duran as a kid. I say that all the time. The stuff my parents played at home, especially on vinyl, I just conflated as old people music until I got old enough to appreciate it. Hip hop was the first music I was actually buying with my allowance, rolling into Sam Goody and buying cassettes and buying vinyl. So I had a deep affinity for rap music. And I just felt, I think if I look back on it, I probably wouldn't say it like this in 6th or 7th grade, but I felt defensive of it. I felt like I don't want to have the two styles mixed together. It wasn't for me. Like I appreciated what rap brought on its own, the humor, the bragging, that very specific musical cadence. I guess the fact that I sensed something urban in it. And it's really kind of judgy from a little white kid from the suburbs judging music as being too white kid from the suburbs. Like there's something ironic about that. But I think I always kind of brought that energy.
I don't think you're wrong.
Right? That like there's something that wasn't for me, despite or in spite of those rare anomalies. And then there were specific things. Like I remember Rage Against the Machine. One of my early college roommates was like diehard fan, bumped it day and night. And I remember Rage Against the Machine being different though because of the political content. Yeah. So there were certain echelons. I didn't lump, even I knew not to lump everything into one box. Like there were definitely things that separated each thing. And I thought, but for me, it was like Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit, that sort of thing. I put that in one box. And again, a lot of it's kind of ignorance because I just heard it. It was an earshot. I just decided it wasn't for me. I should preface this by saying too, like I grew up skateboarding. I started skating in 87. It was all punk rock.
Yep.
I
And
didn't
then
like
in the
punk
early
rock at all.
90s, it turned hip hop when everyone started skating small wheels.
Right, exactly. The early big, small wheels, big pants era. But I didn't like Sex Pistols or the Misfits or the Ramones or the Dead Kennedys or Black Flag. Like I liked, seriously, Bad Religion, Operation Ivy, and Susie and the Banshees. Those are the only ones of all the things my friends were listening to. Like I like those. And if you think of the stuff I liked, it was more a little more of an alternative bent. It was less aggressive. So I don't know if it's just I don't like aggressive music, but at the same time, I was listening to NWA and DOC late in high school.
My criticism of rap rock, of the bad stuff, is that the rapping is usually really bad. The rock part is good and the rap part is usually terrible. I grew up, probably on a lot of the same stuff. Like my favorites were like Rakim, EPMD, Big Daddy Kane, that kind of stuff, Special Ed.
Special Ed was huge.
And, the rapping in rap rock compared to those guys is just terrible.
Right.
And so if you're looking at it from that perspective, I think that's a valid point of view. I think it's also valid if someone doesn't really give a shit and they just think it's a cool song, I think that's valid too.
Yeah.
And you guys are bringing that musician. Sorry, Colin. You guys are bringing that musicianship into it too. And the musical appreciation that I like music as a fan, but I can't speak to any of the technical aspects. I do think you bring up Special Ed. That's a great point. Like when he came out, it was the humor, it was the bragging, it was a certain level of
the
cleverness to his rhyme. He was just on Vlad TV, actually. I have to check it out.
Oh, I need to watch that.
I refuse to subscribe to Vlad because I don't want to pay anything, but you can't see the whole episodes anymore.
Right.
So I'm like, do I pay? I got to see Special Ed. He looks great, by the way. But, there was that level too, where it was like, I wish these guys brought it a little more in terms of the writing, like you said, Finn, or the verbal prowess or whatever, that I just didn't, and maybe there are things that exist on that level that I just missed, but it was common. Like the kids that I grew up with, my best friends in those circles, which mostly had to do with skateboarding, it just wasn't on our radar.
Yeah, to me, I don't think that the genre would ever be looked at like you were saying, where we look at it more musically or whatever. I don't think anyone looks at the genre, and kind of what we're saying is it's undeserved in some sense of they don't look at it and be like, oh man, the fucking musicianship here is real deep. It's a lot. One thing I do think is important to rap rock that I think is an important element to it, with rare exceptions. So there were rap rock bands I liked that didn't really do this, like Urban Dance Squad or something, where it was just rapping, or Rage Against the Machine, where it's just rapping. But I do think having harmony in songs is fairly vital. This is something that 311 talks about a lot, actually, and even sings about and raps about.
The only thing that never gets played out is harmony and melody.
Right. That's exactly right. That's the line. And they have been very, I think, wisely aware of that you can't write these. There are certain rap rock songs that are just legendary that 311 wrote that have no singing in them at all, like Brodals or Hive or whatever, like these fucking killer songs. But they realized, I think, over time, they made fun of two things a lot in their songs, and they weren't really a negative band, but they would always talk about bands that were always upset about everything. Like, why is everything so negative and sad? And that they were never really about that. And there's a song called Hostile Apostle on From Chaos that speaks all about that. And then so I think that's an important element. And I think the second element is just kind of, I think, using that ability, that musicianship of a broader sense of rock to constantly instill the music with something new, which I think allows them to kind of sound. That's why it's kind of confusing to me personally, maybe because I know them so well, where a common, and you'll probably know this, Finn, too, is a common thing with 311 is people like, it all sounds the same. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, it doesn't sound the same at all. That's what's so interesting about people's approach to that. And when you go to a show and they always play new sets every night, basically, you're getting this whole hodgepodge of things. And I think that's kind of what's kept them somewhat relevant and immune for the most part of like, they've always just kind of been around, even when rap rock was not cool. And certainly, when Limp Bizkit and Lincoln, was trying to hang around for a while and all that, it just wasn't looked at as cool anymore. But I guess I'm kind of satiated. I just wanted to touch on it, and it's not to say all rap rock is good. Like you brought up Crazy Town earlier. I couldn't stand Crazy Town.
I legitimately like Crazy Town, but in the same way as I like, Hoarders.
Fair enough.
But I legitimately, they're like, Butterfly is not their best song. You got to listen to the deep cuts. It's a vibe. Let's just put it that way.
On their second record, what was it, Dark Horse or something like that? Yeah. There's a song, their single called Drowning on it that I do like that song, but it's mostly just the drop D, just just awesome sound on that song. I remember when Butterfly came out, I never even got a rap rock vibe from them originally. It felt more of like a electronic or produced song in some way.
Bucket list moment for me is I had Shifty Shellshock on my podcast last year.
That's awesome. And
yeah,
do they still play or whatever?
Yep.
That's cool. That's awesome. Yeah, and they had the kind of harmonizing rapping thing down too, which again, I do want to underline that being pretty important. Like Papa Roach kind of got their way out of it within the same way. But yeah, this is good to know. I just wanted to touch base on it. That's all. Get everyone's takes on it. I thought since Finn was here, I'd speak to him about it. But I know that Ramon is really, really ramping up for like a whole new metal conversation. Because again, we have a huge divergence on this point of like, I still find major value in that genre and still think it's always been as good as it has been. It's awesome. And I don't understand everyone's just rampant disrespect of it. And then to see someone who I kind of met based on our love of 311, which is not new metal, but rap rock, let's say, which is an adjacent genre, and then to see him kind of disown it. It's like, I don't know about this. This is difficult for me to admit.
Inherently, I'm just thinking about rap rock. Like it has a lot, just going in, it has a lot of biases against it. Like I still, believe it or not, I still know people that are mostly older. They're mostly boomers that are just, they still don't understand rap music. You know, they're just like, rap music is talking. So you have that weight, right? Then also, just, you guys correct me if I'm wrong and forgive my ignorance, but just in playing rap rock detective here, it seems like a very West Coast centric style of music. Is there any like big rap rock that's more East Coast?
That's actually a great question.
Not too much.
No, not at all. I mean, when you think, I'm looking through the whole list, and you're absolutely right that 311's from Nebraska, but that's kind of
maybe
it doesn't really count.
They were LA centric. I'm trying to look here to see if anything sticks out to me. Korashi,
I mean, NERD, they're from Virginia, I suppose, that's technically. True. But yeah, it's a very West Coast genre. You're right.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, that's a good point.
It feels like that. There's something and that's not for right or for wrong, but I'm just saying it has that sort of resonance. It has that sort of intonation where it just feels like I don't want to boil everything down to Limp Bizkit, but they were so famous.
Sure.
Right.
Fred Durst is the most famous person in the genre, no question.
Yeah, and they're from Florida.
Okay.
So there's that, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm looking through the list. It's like Zebrahead, Sugar Ray is on here, the Chili Peppers, Rage Against the Machine, POD. Like these are all West Coast bands, California bands specifically.
Right.
Yeah, so there's something to that. But I guess in exiting, I'm still kind of confused what people don't understand about why those things wouldn't go together. Like Dagan, why you said it's because of the corniness, but do you philosophically think that they don't belong together? Or do you think that you just have, because that's the thing that I'm confused about is, wouldn't the ideal be to rap over real music? Like, wouldn't that be the ideal situation?
Well, you talk about the roots.
Right, of course.
Right, that's a very specific, no, absolutely. Like combining two forms of music, I'm all for that. There was just something about it. You know what, maybe, I don't know. There was a lot, I was coming up and rap rock was big. And I was very invested in skateboarding, very much involved in that world. There was I say this a lot, but there was a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of snobbishness. Like skateboarding we would pat ourselves on the back for setting a trend and then move on from it and watch everybody else do it. At least
that era of skateboarders was the biggest fucking assholes. Just it was like fucking
we were
dicks.
Assholes to each other.
Yes.
Dude, I couldn't walk into Supreme. And I was a skateboarder skating around Astor Place every day.
And you don't feel nearly cool enough to set foot in there and get judged. It's like, dude, you work at this fucking retail store. Who are you to judge me? But you feel judged. Like you don't even want to go in there because the guy's going to give you the stink eye because you're not part of the club.
It was bad. And it was just because they saw us every day at the banks or skating the cube or, I would skate against like people that worked behind the counter there in the contest the day before.
Right.
But because we were from Long Island, that's why we got the.
Well, where were they from?
They were all from the city. Furthest away, Brooklyn.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Queens, but probably not. A lot of them were from Manhattan. Yeah. So, there is a certain level of that too, where we were just too cool for everything. You know what I mean? So going back now, like me and PJ talk about starting a podcast all the time about gatekeeping and stuff. And it's just like, now you could argue you need a little gatekeeping. Like it's a little too.
Yeah, we could use a little gatekeeping, I think, at this point.
It's a little
too. Bring back gatekeeping and bullying. That's the takeaway I'm getting.
Yeah. The whole earnest, like it, not meme, but like that people that are like, no, really bring back bullying. I'm like, I don't think that's the answer, but a little bit of gatekeeping, it can go a long way, I think, for everyone's health. But yeah, I'll leave it there. I just wanted to touch on it. It's a a love of mine. Finn, I knew could speak about it in an authoritative way. I'm not disappointed. So, Dustin, let's go to you for your topic, very seasonal, and we'll finish strong here on this episode of Constellation. I leave it to you.
Yeah, so this episode, I was trying to figure out, it either comes out on Christmas Day or it comes out the week before. So it's coming out in very close proximity to Christmas. So
wow, okay.
Being that Constellation, and this is the first year we've done this show, I was like, we got to do the Christmas topic in general. And the way that I primed it to you guys in my email is that something for me has changed over even the last, I would say, 3 or 4 years when it comes to Christmas. I don't know if that has something to do with just that I haven't had any major life changes, but I think about Christmases when I was a kid, or even when I got older, when it's like a teenager or in college, and how much those meant to me. And kind of, I as cheesy as it is, the feeling, the special feeling of like thinking about, being with family and different things like that. And as I've gotten older, and particularly I'll say it's been creeping higher and higher these last 3 years, I've gotten so annoyed with Christmas stuff in general, where particularly this year, what's been so annoying to me is both, number one, how Christmas now starts the day after Halloween, where
I know
the music begins, the decorations come out at the store. And I get it. It makes sense that to me, it's obvious. And I don't know, maybe I'm just being super negative, but it would make sense that stores want to move up and maximize Christmas as much as possible. We've seen this creep where I remember initially being annoyed when Christmas stuff came out around Thanksgiving. And now it's way, way, way before that.
It's like the day after Halloween.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember this year, I was shopping, I think, for clothes for Colin's wedding. So wait, that was towards the end of October. So it wasn't even Halloween yet. I was in a Kohl's and there was Christmas music playing.
Oh my God.
It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Or it's like, what? And dude, and that's the thing too. So these go hand in hand, where I am at the point now where I almost can't stand Christmas music at all. I'm so tired of hearing the same songs only done by different artists, but pretty much in the same way. And dude, I know I'm risking like full curmudgeon mode right now, but
Dustin Furman says, bah humbug.
Dude, I know that's me right now, but dude, this like obsession with the Mariah Carey song is so beaten to death now. I get it. It was cute 2 or 3 years ago. That was like, oh yeah, this is a fun song, and it became like a meme. But now I'm just like, dude, I can't handle it. And I don't even think that it necessarily is what it is. But and Colin, we've talked about this with not to compare Christmas to Star Wars, but anything that reaches a saturation point for too long for me, I just can't deal with anymore. And it just becomes so annoying to me. And so I think that that's part of it, is that I think about Christmas and now it's like, man, it's this like 2-month thing now where if I turn on my car and the radio automatically starts playing, I'm going to hear one of 5 songs over and over. And I don't know, I feel like it's changed in some ways for me for the worse. Obviously when I get close, like when it's close to Christmas and Christmas Eve is here and Christmas Day, it's great. I have a great time. I thought though the past few years, it's like when Christmas Day is like, oh, finally, now that Christmas is actually here, I'm like ready for it to be over because I'm so sick of all this, So it's weird. I have this relationship where I want to enjoy the holiday for what it is, and I can't because it just, and I don't know if this is, like I said earlier, that it's just so corporatized now. It always has been to some degree in the US, but now that that's extended, So I've taken a very negative approach, but Finn, I'll throw this to you as our our guest, and now as a new father, right? That I'm sure that this is going to put a whole new light, and maybe that's a change like that is probably eventually what
this should
could
be
change
interesting.
me.
Yeah, the philosophies behind this. Oh, this will be very interesting. Yeah.
Well, when I was a kid, I always hated Christmas because my mother was not a very stable person. So holidays to me were like, how long until my mom has a meltdown over, somebody doing something she doesn't like, and like her parents died young and she had a really tragic, bad life and all this stuff. So I understand why she was the way she was. But holidays I associate with my mom like losing her shit and screaming and crying and it just being miserable, and I want to go hide under a rock until it goes away. So I always hated, the holidays when I was a kid until basically I met my wife 10 years ago and I started spending the holidays with her family. And so I went and did Christmas with them, and I was expecting everyone to start screaming and crying at each other, and it never happened. And I was like, oh, wow, this is interesting. It's kind of fun when everyone's not screaming at each other. I could get into this. And so I've actually become more, positively inclined towards the holidays over the years, although I totally recognize everything you're saying. But that's sort of my experience. And now that we have a kid, we had our first Thanksgiving with him. And I certainly want him to have positive associations with the holidays. So I want to try really hard to put all my, baggage aside and give him the best holidays that he can have.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Dustin. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's funny because I think about it too, that when I think about some of these things that I outlined, it's like, man, a lot of this is just kind of shit in my head, that it's stuff that I'm letting bother me, that maybe it's just like, why don't you just tune that out to some degree? But I guess it's just hard when there's stuff all the time. But Colin, you sound like you want to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, my fucking watch keeps going off because I notoriously keep my phone and my everything on do not disturb at all times, and people have started really getting mad at me recently, especially my wife, but also others, where it's like I can't get in touch with you, and I'm like, yes, and they're like, yeah, well, like I need to get in touch with you. So recently I made this sort of special thing on my phone, like a special profile, but it's constantly just I got to figure out. It's like it's annoying, and it's just things I don't even care about. It's like, oh, your fucking Roomba's stuck. I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm in the middle of a podcast anyway. Yeah, I wanted to jump in here just to say that I was going to ask Finn about deeper about the philosophy of Santa Claus, because what I see, the internet makes it seem like everything is normal, right? Like, oh, everyone's having these conversations, and I don't know. So I don't know if anyone's ever actually having these conversations or if it's just made up. But there seems to be this theory amongst some newer parents that you just kind of got to level with your kids immediately and never really buy into this idea that this is this fake thing going on. And I kind of dig that in some way, just because you're kind of letting the kid behind the veil early. It's like a very adult thing. If they can structurally understand it as they grow up and be like, wow, I've kind of always been trusted enough and serious enough to understand like what this actually is. I don't know. That's interesting, but it does remove the whole wonder and joy of the experience for a kid as well. So I know you said you want to give your child, so I guess that answers the question. You want to give your child everything you didn't have in this.
Dagan, you look like you're scoffing at this.
That's awful.
You've got more experience with this than I do. I'd be curious to know what you think.
Yeah, good.
Kids are going to have their whole lives to be adults and realize, the cynical, negative nature of everything. Like, let them have, that's my steadfast philosophies. Let them have their time of wonder, joy, innocence, fantasy. Colin and I have definitely talked about this before on past knockback topics, especially, but it's okay. Those are the okay lies. Those are the good lies for your kids. It's like, it's fun. I think that's the worst case scenario, is that it's just fun. Best case scenario is they have a good childhood and fond memories, and then could play those things out with their kids, God willing, someday, type of thing. No, I'm really a kid at heart. I know I'm very, serious about this type of thing, but yeah, I think it's like required. It's
so
really,
that kind of that changes my mind about it a little bit, because my parents always, they always told me the truth from the beginning, and my wife's family is from Vietnam, so they don't really. They celebrate Christmas, but they don't care about it, And so I was initially thinking, oh yeah, we'll just tell them the truth from the beginning. But now that you put it that way, I think maybe it would be a little bit more fun to, play along with the Santa thing when he's young enough.
When did your wife's parents come over?
1990.
1990. Did it have? Was it anything to? So it had nothing to do with the war. It was just.
Oh
later.
No, they were in prison camps and shit. And her dad broke out of the prison camps and put them on a boat and got them to the Philippines. And then they were in a refugee camp for 2 years and all that stuff.
Wow.
So they were
escaping
murderous communists just like everyone else.
Yeah, good that's all. I mean, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering. I always wonder that when I hear about someone I know or I meet someone who's Vietnamese. Like I'm always wondering, like, what is your
Yeah, they came over much later, but it was that.
Because it's always dark like that. It's always something dark like that. I hate to say.
I mean, they didn't want to fucking leave.
Yeah. So when I heard 1990, I was like, oh, okay. It's sure. It's a little bit better at that time. Dustin,
the thing about Santa. So growing up, I really don't have any memories of believing in Santa because it's not that my parents were willing to play along, but I figured, and it's not that I was like a super smart kid, but the fantasy never really worked on me. I remember asking my parents, be like, is Santa real? And they were like, well, what do you think? I said, well, it doesn't really sound very real. It certainly doesn't sound possible. Like that's because it's not. And so growing up, I knew that I was willing to be respectful to other kids that believed, but I'm thinking when I have kids, there's a very selfish part of me that if I'm going to spend a bunch of money on gifts, they're from me, not from some imaginary dude.
I get it.
Like you want credit for it.
I've heard of families. I've known families that they say like all your gifts are from us. One of these gifts will be from Santa. He comes and gives you the one gift, but we want you to know the rest of them, they're from us. He gave you the socks. We gave you the DS.
But they're going to know that someday.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I'm in agreement with that, where there's not some magic guy out there. The person that cares about you and is buying you, your Fortnite money or whatever is in 5 to 20 years, whatever, however long it happens, not 20 years, but whenever that happens, that's me because I love you. And I'm giving you this to celebrate the holiday. So I don't know. So Dagan, do you think that's a little selfish?
I don't know if I want to classify it as selfish. I don't think I would deem to be that judgmental, but I think there's something about just having a special day. It's like you could be the gift giver the other 364 days, that type of thing. I mean, I remember being a kid. It's so funny, like being a kid, the Christmas perspective from a kid's POV and then the adult POV. And I do think, Dust, you might be stepping in. You're at an age now, you might be stepping into permanent Ebenezer Scrooge mode if you don't have kids soon. Because for me, that was really the rebirth of Christmas joy and wonder, was having kids. It gives it a fresh spin, a new energy. I remember being a kid and sitting on the floor with my pile of presents on Christmas morning. My siblings had their giant mound of presents, and my mom sitting on the couch with a cup of tea, my dad sitting on the couch or the armchair with his cigarette, and just watching.
Hell yeah.
And looking at them being like, oh my God, they don't have anything. That's what Christmas is when you're an adult. Like I'm on the, like, I remember being like, I'm on the clock. Like I have like, if I'm 8, I have like 5 more Christmases and then I'm going to be that. And they must be miserable. And maybe at the end of our Santa thing, hours long with the kids unwrapping frantically in a frenzy, maybe they sit down and my dad gives my mom a necklace and my mom gives my dad a power saw, whatever. But that's all they were getting. And I just thought, oh my God, drag. Like what the fuck?
But isn't it funny that ends up happening and then you get to a point, I mean, I'm at this point now where I could give a fuck.
You don't care.
I mean, we make the argument in our family. I mean, we share the same family, but you're usually not here for Christmas, where we do it. We used to do like the white elephant, Christmas exchange kind of thing. And we eventually were just like, can we just stop doing this? Like for the adults, like we have the little kids, nieces and nephews, they can get their presents, but we don't need to do this. I don't want, and I've really kind of put my foot down in recent years where I'm like, I'm not doing this and I don't want anything. Please stop buying me things. Like I appreciate it, but we don't need to do this for each other anymore. It's just so weird that we can insist on doing this. And so the one tradition we've gotten off the ground that we do in addition to this other stuff now, but hopefully we will only do this year, is the ugly ornament exchange, which is is great. And I love doing that, where we buy heinous ornament, like heinous things
it's
for each
fun.
other. And it's really, that to me is fun and a fun tradition.
You relent when you're a kid. You think, because when you're a kid, it's all about that pile of presents. I find when I get older, then Christmas, the Christmas vibes are different. You don't know that it's going to evolve as a kid. You just think it's about everything I'm getting. For me, when I'm older, it's funny that Dustin talks about like the commercialism and the 3-month-long advertising run up and how aggravating it is. And it is. And it's a ploy. And we know we're getting the wool pulled over our eyes, and we're subject to all this shit. Can't walk into a Target in August without seeing the Halloween. And then as soon as Halloween's over, Halloween night, all the Christmas stuff goes up. But I get aggravated by a lot of things, but that's a welcome distraction for me. I love, that's the thing about being an adult with Christmas. It's not just about having kids. It's like the vibes of, it's different. It's like the weather, the decorations, the fireplace, family, the Christmas music. Just that, for me too, like having a 16-year-old or a 13-year-old, like I could tell you, my 16-year-old, her whole life is spent trying to dodge anything with the family. Like, it's like I have on Christmas, I know I'm going to have a captive audience. You know what I mean? And then 2 days later, her friend's flying in from Toronto. I'm going to lose her again on the 27th. So it's like I got 2 days with my 16-year-old.
And then she's going to be gone in a couple of years.
Yeah, and she's going to be gone. We have like another 2 Christmases, right? So that's another thing too, where but it's funny because I remember being as a kid thinking Christmas is going to suck when I'm an adult, but then it's just maturing and realizing it's not just about, the gifts are a perk. It's just about really hanging out with family and making the kids happy. I think that sums up being a parent though. As long as the kids are happy, you're happy. It's just like, that's always the equation, so.
The gift thing is, the adult gift thing is interesting. Well, not that kind of adult gift. I mean, maybe, but with Holly and I hope that even when we have kids, we never give up giving each other gifts, because I love shopping and buying stuff for her. That I love it when I can find something that she wants that she doesn't even know exists. That's the top tier. So I hope, I don't know, Dagan, do you still...
That's good.
Dagan,
like
you're the one that you've been married the longest and have had kids.
Yeah.
So are you still giving gifts, you and Helene?
We do. Yeah. 21 years now. Yeah, we do. And this is it's funny, like incrementally with our groups of friends, I see them one by one going in for like, we're going to stop giving gifts. We're going to stop giving gifts. We're just going to go on a vacation. We're going to Cancun in the summer. That's a gift, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But that actual exchange tapering off. This is the first year Helene brought up a couple of weeks ago, like not even in a decisive capacity, but should we do that? Like, we want to go to the Caribbean with the kids in the spring. And I'm like, no, like it's really important. I think you make a great point, Dust. Like, it's really important that everybody be included in getting who doesn't want to get a little something? A little surprise, especially if it's something unasked for, right? Like finding that perfect gift, because there's joy in the giving and the receiving.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be
certainly.
expensive.
You could say that again, buddy.
I think of this is kind of stupid, but one of my favorite gifts in the past few years is I sincerely meant this as a joke. I wasn't fishing to my dad. We were out and about before Christmas, and I was looking at some games. I was like, yeah, no one gets me games anymore because they just know that I just buy them. So it's kind of disappointing, but it's like, what are they going to get me? Because I just buy all the games I want. And then I don't know if I mentioned something or Holly, but a few days later on Christmas, there is like a present that I know that he like wrapped within a day or two, and he got me Crash Bandicoot 4 for Christmas. And he's like, this is you saying that no one's willing to get you a video game for Christmas. And I heard you wanted that. And I was like,
I was hoping it was one of those hentai games from the eShop.
Oh yeah. Senkagura or whatever. Yeah. That would be the Panty Hunter or something like that.
Dude, there was one we were looking at, like I was saying, we were on the PSN looking at a lot of these games, and there's one about cross-dressing guys it's nice. It's called like something cross-dressing men.
It's very progressive.
I'm like, it's the whole series. We encountered several of them.
There's a whole thing in Japan about boy love.
Boy love. Okay. Well,
boy love, like very pretty men.
Yeah, that's to each their own. I keep saying with, I had this joke when I was playing Trails of Cold Steel, which gets awkward at times, and I keep saying to Micah, I was like, oh no, they're all 18. They're all 18. And she's like, why are they in school uniforms?
Well, we don't ask.
I'm like, I'm not playing it for this reason. I'm not interested in the fan service stuff. I swear. One thing I wanted to ask you guys, I already know the answer for Dustin and Dagan, but Finn, are you an only child or do you have siblings?
Yeah.
You are an
Well,
only child?
I have some step siblings, but I am an only child.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask I was asking only because I think that everyone's experience is somewhat unique by virtue of that too. You have to understand that I was the youngest of 4 and I was the youngest on the whole block. I had no prayer of getting to be very old without knowing that this shit wasn't real. And I didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I by the time I would say I was in 1st or 2nd grade, I was pretty much categorically certain. I remember Mom being like, no, it's like lying for so long. I'm like, I know. And I've expressed memories of, I guess I was on 2nd or 3rd grade, sitting in the master bedroom of our old house with our sisters, wrapping my presents.
That's a little much.
Like literally taking the G.I. Joes, I don't even have any right here, and then putting them together so the bubbles are next to each other so they make like a rectangle, and then wrapping those. And I remember that clear as day. And I also remember my best friend, as a child, Tim, was a year older than me, and then his brother was 2 years older than him, and his brother was 2 years older than him, and it was 3 boys. Right. And I remember we used to like go, they knew where all the presents were hidden in their house. They lived in this huge house, and they used to go through them and unwrap them and like do all this crazy shit. We used to also go through his dad's Playboys and all that kind of stuff. And so I just never, I became an adult earlier, I think, than I would have otherwise because of that. But the other thing I kind of remember was, how did you, let me back up and say, I'm surprised. I don't think it's true anymore, but like our sister Allie's kid, Ayla, still believed in Santa Claus last year. And I think she would have been in 5th grade or something like that.
Wow.
That's old.
And I'm like,
for today.
But regardless, like just in a vacuum, I'm like, but to me, I'm like, how has no one ruined it already? Like by the time, again, I was in 2nd, 3rd grade, it was ruined so thoroughly. It's incredible that anyone can even hold on to that wonder and modernity, knowing
she doesn't really believe. She's hanging on at that.
Yeah,
I especially in this social media climate.
Yeah, it's just like, to me, I'm kind of, I get the joy and the wonder and all of that, but I kind of think Christmas has been so thoroughly bastardized that it's it's so dark to say. It's like a generation has to almost make a sacrifice and be like, we're not doing this anymore. Like, and unfortunately, like some youngs, because Dave, you said something that I find kind of concerning, where it's like, you can be the gift giver the other 364 days. It's like, so you're not the gift giver on the day where they get all the presents.
Yeah, but they're going to realize it
all the other days you can, for the random thing or the dinner, but when you get them $1,000 worth of gifts, that's when you don't get any credit for it.
I don't care.
But as long as they're happy, you don't care. Yeah,
I'm not in it for the glory. The second thing, when you'll
I am definitely in it for the glory. I'm going to tell you that right now.
But the other thing is, it's like they're going to know someday. And my kids are at the age where they know. That's a thing. Like I remember going to 4th grade, and probably I milked it the last year or whatever, where I went to Mom, was like, this isn't a thing, and she's like, no, this isn't a thing. You're on the you're on the up and up and everything like that. My kids were much younger. I think it gets harder and harder. A lot of it because of technology, right? Social media. I don't want to say social media, the internet, but that's really what it is, right? They're going to hang on less and less. But yeah, I don't know. I just really maintain, it just speaks to my soul. Like the wonder is important because they're going to know it's not real at some point. This is the time to play make-believe and have fantasies and, dream about what Santa's going to bring and all that kind of thing. I personally don't see any harm in it, but I know there's a lot of conversation around this now. It was never a thing when we were little.
Yeah. I don't know that I see personally material harm. I think some people do feel that way, but I don't know if it's that deep. I think that we have a greater philosophical rot. I'm using that word a lot today, philosophical, a greater societal rot, let's say, in just the commercialization of everything to the utmost degree. And this is the way the conversation began about, and I've noticed that in my own neighborhood. And I've said this on the show, and I've said that to my neighbors and stuff, where I left Long Island in 2002. I went to Boston until 2007. I lived in San Francisco until 2017. I lived in LA until 2020. I come back to suburbia, right? And suddenly it's different. There's totally a different vibe now. It starts, like we said, so much earlier. people are decorating. The way people even decorate their houses is well above and beyond what you would have seen at the most ornate houses back in the day. Like, you know, the houses that used to make the newspaper and stuff.
Right.
Like, that's like everyone's house now. There are people in my neighborhood, and they're really nice people. It's no big deal at all, that get probably thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff in their yards. Like, what is going on here?
It's a contest.
Yeah. And I just, I don't like the glory. Dude, I'm a capitalist. I own 2 businesses. I'm not shitting on it at all, but I just think that this is the definition of just commercial, you know, consumer capitalism.
Yeah, and it's not just Christmas. It's like, you know, that they have Halloween cards at Target. Like, what the fuck is a Halloween card? That never existed. And like, I lived in Cleveland for a while, and which is the headquarters of American Greetings.
Sure.
And somebody was like, "Oh, what are you doing for Sweetest Day?" I'm like, what the hell is that? And American Greetings invented a whole other holiday called Sweetest Day, which is basically Valentine's Day 2. That's like in the summer or something.
What?
Which they tried to get the whole country on board with it, but it didn't work out. And so only people in Cleveland still did it because, you know, they were in the backyard. And that's an example of what you're talking about, I think. Yeah, it's like they're just trying to, it's just, you know, it is... I'm a capitalist too, but it is true that it's like all these things just get reduced to, I mean, that there's like Memorial Day sales and nobody, it's like, hey, your grandpa got killed on fucking Omaha Beach. Do you want 30% off a dryer?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It doesn't, that's a well put. It doesn't resonate at all. And I just, the Halloween card stuff is interesting. I resent, and Micah knows how I feel about this, is I really hate Valentine's Day. Not because it's a bad day about love or your significant other, but because it is so manufactured that it's unbelievable that we actually buy into it. It's like, we know where it comes from. Like, what is going on with this? Like, why do we make this into this huge thing? And then people get all broken up over it and heartbroken.
Are you spending enough this Valentine's Day?
Right, exactly. And the jewelry
to prove
commercials
that you love them,
and women feeling lonely and men feeling lonely and inadequate and all that. I'm like, dude, this is...
The wedding industry is like this too. The entire wedding industry revolves around making women feel inadequate so that they feel pressured to spend crazy amounts of money on their wedding on bullshit that nobody cares about. Like, I don't know, getting fucking napkins that cost, you know, $40 each. 0 people at your wedding will remember the napkins. 0. You know, but if you read these wedding magazines, they're like, did you know the average bride spends $50,000? Who the fuck spends $50,000 on their wedding? That's not fucking average.
No, there's nothing average about that.
Colin, your napkin sucked, by the way.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I've been thinking
the
about
day was ruined.
The wedding. You know,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't remembering less and less about it as time goes on. Anyway, it's
all people remember if they have food and they were around people that they care about and you had a good time,
had fun. Yeah,
and they played Mr. Brightside and we jumped around like the 30-year-old white dudes that we are.
Exactly. You know? That's all they need. You don't need to fucking spend $200 on flowers for every table. That's not important. You know, and that's the same thing with Valentine's Day and Christmas is like, we really do lose sight of what's important, which is being together with people you care about, you know, not spending money on trinkets.
Yeah, it's,
well said. I
totally agree. And I think that what's crazy to me, and I have this argument a lot on the various shows, is just the the commoditization rather of everything, right on down to art and entertainment, and everyone's like AI art and all. It's like, oh my god, like what is going on? Like, why are we doing this to ourselves and pretending that the level of consumption is good? I don't even care about it from terms like it's bad for the planet. It's like, dude, just divorce yourself from that. Is it good for you? Consume.
But if you're aware, right? As long as you have awareness, you're cognizant, that's all you need, right? That's what I'm talking about. The commercialization doesn't really bother me because I go in only as so far as I feel I need to, and I dip my toe in, or I do what I have to do as far as getting gifts. But, you know, if you don't fall prey to it, in other words, who cares?
I want money. I don't want to spend it.
Right. That's the problem. Everyone should buy my shit, but I don't want to buy their shit.
Right. No, that's exactly right. Why you buy this shit, but not that. I just think that people
buy my video game. No, I'm not buying your goddamn holiday card.
I think that I say all the time, and it's the reason why I think Last Stand's Patreon is so valuable, is because we try to make the price so that you don't even really worry about it, as opposed to, Like I'm looking at Netflix now and it's almost $20 and it's like, I don't know, man. It's not that I mean, honestly, it's like, it's not really that relevant. It's just principally, am I really,
right?
Am I part of the problem?
$500 a year? I don't know, man.
Yeah. I mean, $1, $5, $2. It's different, I think. Apple
just went up $3 a month and I'm like, I just can't, it's not a good way to feel, but I just feel like really Apple needs the money. $3, everybody's subscription just went up $3. You got to just can't, I think you just got to, I just am continuing to navigate through the different ones as I need them. I'm not doing this anymore. So it's smart. Yeah. I just get everything. Like the things I subscribe to, like there are things, people probably feel this way about Last Stand. Like if there are things you get out of it on a constant basis, that's different. Like I've been a Spotify member for 12 years or something. I'm never going to not be on Spotify. I love it. But for things where it's like, oh, I just need to watch a season of this or catch into this, there's just no reason for them, for you to stay around like that anymore. Right. I don't know what they're thinking. They're dreaming. Yeah. Yeah. It's not sustainable, probably. It's definitely not sustainable. And that's why I keep saying that big missing, people think the money is what's missing. And I'm like, no, what's missing are the actual metrics of what's being watched. Because when you see those numbers, you'll see how no one's watching fucking dick. Yep. And then they're really going to have problems selling you on
Everyone watches Friends. Nobody watches 99% of the other shit.
Right. Exactly. Right. And those are the numbers that they hide. And that's a problem. But, are you satisfied, Dustin, or do you have more do you want to say about this Christmas, or as they would call it in the Tudors, Christmas tide?
Christmas tide. No, I think I'm good. I think it's good. I don't know. It felt cathartic to get it out and say it. So I feel like now, because like I said, we're recording this on December 1st, and this will come out in a few weeks. So I don't know, I'll have to update you guys if I've gone full Scrooge by Christmas time.
Find 5 children to ruin Christmas for. Not in any other way than to tell them Santa isn't real. Just find 5 children and liberate them.
Right.
Just go knock the presents out of their hand, push them in a mud puddle, and run away.
Take a pen and where it says like love Santa, just cross it out and say mom and dad.
Right. Yeah. So it's either going to be that, or I'm going to be doing heel clicks in the streets or something. Hopefully, like with a red scarf and doing dances. So it's one of the two. But yeah, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad. And glad to have this combination of people to talk to this week. It was a lot of fun. Finn, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I appreciate it. Tell everyone where they can find you if you want to be found. Some people don't even want to be found.
Just Google Wiki Feet Men and Finn Mckenty.
Excellent. I hope to have you back again in the new year, and our best to you and yours. I hope you had a good time.
Yep. Anytime.
Dag, we'll see you next time, my friend. Be well.
Oh, it was fun. Finn, it was a pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
Same to you.
So nice having some new blood. These old tired son of a bitches.
And Dustin, goodbye to you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just adding to the chorus here, but super glad we could have Finn on. Finn, you've been it's been cool getting to know you, and just always an inspiration for me in a lot of ways in your content. So I'm glad we can collaborate. Definitely won't be the last time.
Yeah, keep up the great work and keep being funny on Twitter. You really are like one of the funniest people I follow.
I'll do my best.
All right. And all of you out there, thank you for your love, kindness, and support. We appreciate you. We'll see you next time for more. Remember, patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access and laststandmedia.store for merch. Until next time, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.